Again, I'm using the word surreal so many
Hmm.
times in this
And
session
it's
itself, but
totally justified.
just imagine you are standing there and it's white and white and white and white till the horizon. There are no mountains, there are no houses. It's like you are in middle of an ocean where the ocean is of salt and there are no waves, and you see the sky coming down to salt flats. So in their rainy season, water comes and it becomes
Hmm.
like a mirror. You might have seen some of those photographs.
Yes.
So people go there for their pre-wedding shoot and all that stuff. Like you can drive miles and miles on it, and it will be the same view. It will be the
Oh
same
my
view, and it's like
God.
flat. There is no bump even of an inch or anything, because when it rains, the salt becomes evenly spread, and then the water evaporates, and it just leaves salt flat as flat as it
Gorgeous.
gets.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So when we got there, it was still dark. You could see Machu Picchu surrounded by mountains, and the first feeling that you have when you get there is just of awe that you
Oh
made it
man.
all the way growing up in India, this being one of the wonders of the world, built by the Incas, and while Machu
Oh,
Picchu is extremely,
I'm getting goosebumps, man.
and it's just incredible. So you are just standing there in awe for first 7 8 minutes, and then you're like, okay, take a picture, I just want to stand here. But I
Yes.
think anyone going there, it's impossible that they will not be in awe for the first 7 8 10 minutes. And then the sun rises behind the mountains, and you have those first rays of sun, falling on Machu Picchu, and then it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Now it's completely glowing, basking in the glory of being Machu Picchu in bright August sun.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Misadventures of a Sneaker. I'm your host Revati, and today we are taking you on an unforgettable journey through the heart of South America, a destination many of us know very little about, but it's one on most of our bucket lists. And that's all thanks to this wonders of the world called Machu Picchu. We have been reading it through all our school books, right? So now imagine standing amidst the awe inspiring ruins of Machu Picchu, feeling the ancient energy of the Inca civilization, and then suddenly a really cute looking llama walks across you, and you get that absolutely picture perfect photo. Well, this is exactly what happened with our guest when he was there at Machu Picchu. So, in our episode today, we welcome a fantastic guest, Sharique. Well, I know I overuse the word extremely well traveled a little too often because, well, that's how amazing guests we have been getting on our podcast. But Sharique is on another level altogether. And what I admire about him is that his travels are rarely the FOMO induced from your friends' travels, but rather Sharique loves to read, loves to watch, documentaries, movies, and all that. And a lot of his travels are very FOMO induced from a book series that he reads or a fantastic movie that he's watched. And by the way, he also mentioned that our podcast is starting to give him a little FOMO with all the travel stories that our guests share. I love it. Also, by the way, the show notes of this podcast has a lot of Shariq's book, movie, TV series, podcast recommendations, so you can head over there later. Okay, so now about this episode. Picture yourself standing on Bolivia's Salar de Uyuni, which is the world's largest salt flats, with the sky and the earth merge. And then picture yourself sailing in the world's highest navigable lake, Lake Titicaca. And then you're delving into the bustling markets of Cusco, the colorful streets of La Paz. What a wow vacation, right? I'm telling you, this episode is going to transport you to some of the most breathtaking and culturally rich destinations in this entire planet. But as always, before we start, let's take a quick little break, and I promise it'll be quick. Hey, do you know we write a travel themed newsletter every week? And in each newsletter, we write about different destinations and travel experiences from around the world. You're going to get a lot of details about this particular episode as well in our newsletter. You've got to head over to misadventuresofasneaker.substack.com. That's misadventuresofasneaker.substack.com. We'll link it up in the bio as well. Alrighty. So now, pack your sense of adventure and let's welcome Sharique and take us into the magical land of South America, specifically Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador.
Welcome to my podcast, Sharique. I'm very excited to have you. Our podcast is Misadventures of a Sneaker. It's a travel podcast. And from all that I have heard about you, you are like one of my brand ambassador kind of a person. Like you have, हम लोग बोलते हैं कि किसी के feet में अगर एक चक्रा होता है, that means you're a kind of a person who travels like nuts.
Right.
So you have it on both your feet, maybe your palms and all as well. So super
No,
welcome
thanks,
to the
Revati.
podcast. Very excited.
Thank you, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I've also heard some of the episodes, and I really loved them. And I'm very happy to be part of this podcast. And chakra that you have used, it's very funny because some of my friends told me that you have a roller skateboard under you. Just you can't stand at one place. It's just to keep your balance, you have to keep moving. Sort of a situation with me. Uh, so I think chakra of ancient time is the skateboard or roller skate of 21st century or 20th century.
Or whatever the time we are living now
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice.
You work in a sales role, right? Does it take you to a lot of places?
Yes, I get to visit cities like Jaisalmer, Jodhpur, Srinagar, Lucknow, Chandigarh on very frequent basis.
It sounds fabulous, but summer में visiting many of these places is like,
Yeah, but yeah, there are flip side to it. But I think it gives me an opportunity to keep traveling. That is one. Secondly, it gives me opportunity to live more than one life in a way. Because
how?
when I'm in Srinagar, it's completely different to what I'm doing, on day-to-day basis in my, corporate office. And when I go out and meet all these distributors and retailers that we have, some of them are like millionaire. Like I met a distributor whose monthly turnover is like 400 crores, which is bigger than my own company. He's based out of like who started from scratch, and they literally had nothing maybe 30 years ago, and then they have built it
Wow.
penny by penny. And so very different spectrum, very different kind of people you get to meet. You meet people who have been running this business for 40 years, then you meet their kids who are just joining the business. So in that regard, I think that's what I really like about being in sales.
Oh, very nice, man. Can you ask some of these people to adopt me? Like ये जो millionaire वाले जो लोग हैं.
Yeah, yeah.
I wish. Oh my God, very interesting, man. And but I've heard that you have traveled to wonky international destinations as well, wonky Indian ones as well. Wonky meaning ones that are not in the top 20 most visited places and all of it. So very remote ones, very offbeat ones, offbeat being a very, very often used word now, but still. Has work taken you there as well? Or is it just the chakra on your feet or the roller skates or however it is?
Not really work. So I've traveled in India for work, as I told you, and I continue to travel. So when I was in my MBA, I graduated in 2011. So all these B schools have exchange program. And when I got to know that happened, so I think my desire to get into MBA increased, not for the MBA itself, but just for the exchange program. And I got into MBA and I got very shitty marks in semester one, low enough for me not to qualify for the exchange. So I studied real hard and in term two, and then got into some top 10% or 15% just to make
Wow.
average. No, just like that was one semester in my life that I studied. So if you look at graph, it goes like this, then up, and then there is a long valley, because I had to get certain marks to qualify for exchange, which I did. And then I got to go to Denmark. I lived there for 4 months. And Denmark is a filthy expensive country to live in. The reason I chose Denmark was it was one of very few countries where they had no attendance rule. So
Oh,
I'm like, okay,
shortlisting criteria काफी
हाँ,
amazing रहा तुम्हारा.
yeah. So I was there for 4 months. I traveled on Ural Pass. I think it has been a tried and tested journey for so many B school graduates. But what it did is that I was able to travel all of Europe. The places that people spend years to cover, I was able to cover them in 4 months. And by then I had gotten this bug the travel bug. I came back to India and I had to travel. I mean, I knew I can't stop traveling. After that, Europe was already out of the window. So then you start going to those offbeat places. One thing with me was that I was not scared, of going to places. So one of the first countries that I visited after coming back to India was Jordan. Back then, it was not a very popular place. Now it is a very popular place. I went back in 2012, and there were hardly any tourists. Petra had just made to the list of top 7 wonders. Then we went to Morocco. Thailand was there for a while. We kept going to Thailand a couple of times, 3 times. Then I went to Russia. So all these places, while not on the tourist trail, but not completely off the grid for at least Indian travelers.
Mhm.
Then I got this opportunity to move to US with my organization at the time. I moved to Chicago. I lived there for 4 years, and
Oh.
that gave me opportunity to continue traveling. In the US and outside US, Latin America, Mexico, Peru, Bolivia. Ended up going to Antarctica as well from there. And then I moved back 2019 to India. COVID, it took away 2 to 3 years of life, but I started traveling back again. So since then, I've been to Italy, Vietnam, Qatar. We went to Qatar for the World Cup. So we watched Messi live in one of the quarterfinals in Qatar.
Oh my
So
God.
and I think as I've grown in my corporate career, I can afford slightly luxury trips. So I remember when I went to Jordan and Morocco, we used to cap the whole thing as 60,000. 60,000 rupees will not exceed. If I have to be fasting on the last 2 days of the trip, so be it. I can't exceed beyond 60,000. But going to Qatar was a very expensive proposition. But now that I earn a little bit more, I can afford to indulge in some of these things as well. So travel has also the meaning has changed for me a little bit. Earlier, it was just going and taking pictures in front of Colosseum and going taking pictures in front of Eiffel Tower. Now I've started traveling for sporting events. I've started traveling for food. Like um, my son turned 8 this month. Eight
Mhm.
months, not
Oh,
years.
8 months. Okay.
Yeah,
When you said eight, I assumed
yeah.
years.
So his 5th month anniversary, we went to Malaysia, and people thought we are crazy, and we were. I think in the hindsight, we should have waited a little bit. But one of the reason that we went to Malaysia is that I wanted to try this dish called Asam Laksa, which is a soupy noodle from one of their province called Penang. So I have
Mhm.
been reading about it. It is one of the greatest foods in the world if you go to CNN list and Condé Nast list, and I really wanted to try that. And of course, I wanted to see Malaysia. But I'm trying to make is that as I've grown older, the meaning and the reason behind travel has changed, but the travel itself hasn't. Yeah.
Did the dish live up to its hype?
Yes, yes, it's
अरे
one of the
वाह,
most amazing food. Unfortunately for you, I think you are a vegetarian. I was
मैं पूछने
listening
वाली
to
थी यार.
no.
अरे यार, मैं पूछने वाली थी, कुछ तो वेज वाला ऑप्शन होगा नहीं?
No, so Malaysia has a lot of Indians. I think both Indian vegetarian and non-vegetarian cuisines are very popular. We have a lot of people who migrated from South India, so you'll
Mhm.
find that. But this particular dish,
Dish.
unfortunately, has a very strong base of fish.
Oh,
So yeah.
very interesting. अरे वाह, my God, traveling for food, traveling for sports. Traveling for food also makes sense because there are countries which have multiple cuisines in different parts of
Yeah,
its
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in its region. मतलब हमारा India देख लो, but
True.
and just in biryani we have Lucknow biryani, Kolkata biryani, this biryani, that biryani, like 10, 15 varieties of it itself. Similarly in other countries and their regions as well. Yeah. Okay. Now I have heard that your travel is usually a very well researched travel because you're also someone who loves to read. So you love to research about the place before you go there. Is that your style of travel now as well, or has it like evolved?
So I think when we talk about researching for travel, there are two kind of research really. One is that how to go from one place to another. If someone lands in India, there are 5 ways of going from Delhi to Jaipur, for instance. There could be a morning flight, an evening flight. There are There is a Vande Bharat and Shatabdi. You can take a bus, you can take a car. So I think I don't really do that kind of research, but I read a lot about the place that I'm going to. Why is that place like that? Who are the people living there? So I really like to place my travel in or the place that I'm visiting in the context, really. So if I'm talking about food of Malaysia, so the dish that I'm talking about, why is that dish just from that place, and what is the history of that dish? And to a lot of people that might sound insufferable, but it is what it is. And just to give you example of this dish, so there were during the British era, Malaysia was a British colony, and they had people. They would get a lot of labor from indentured labor from India and China. So there are Malays and Indians and Chinese living there. So you will have all these Indian cuisine enmeshed with Chinese and Malaysian, and then these Chinese who came in from southern China, they brought their own cuisine, and then it got influenced by the Malaysian cuisine or the Malaysian ingredient, and that's why you have that dish at that particular place and in that particular time in the world history. So I like to know that aspect of travel because it gives me a lot more from my travel. But to be honest, yeah, so I'm still that kind of traveler. I still love to research a lot, be it the literature of the place, be it the history of the place, a little bit about culture, just wanting to know why a certain place is the way it is. Just to, again, we are talking about Malaysia. You go to Malaysia and you see so many Chinese people, and you would be like, why are there so many Chinese people here? So if you know, you are able to connect the dots, and it, to me, that makes travel a lot more fulfilling.
Are you the kinds who goes and takes a walking tour in most places as well, with the ones that offer that kinds?
I do. I think wherever the opportunity arises, I do take those sort of walking tours, because they do take 2 to 3 hours, but they give you a lot of pointers to explore, a lot of again food places to go and try. So as you could guess by now, I'm also a big time foodie. So tell all those. Yeah.
Yes. So I also enjoy post walking tour conversations with them. So once it ends, people walk up and give their tip to them, and then they hang around for a little while more. So I love those conversations with them because they share a lot of, local में यहाँ पे जाके करो, वहाँ पे जाके करो. So what do you like? Oh, you're a vegetarian. You like, oh, you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
sweet tooth. Oh, you do that. You're Indian. So you love the masalas. You should go there. A lot of those kind of things. I mean, I'm again talking just about food, but a lot of these small things that are just catered to you. So I really enjoy those walking tours too.
In
Okay.
fact, the travelers, I mean, not just the tour guide, when if you stay for a while, you will get to know a lot more from your fellow travelers as well. So I get what you're saying.
Have you done solo travels?
Yes, I have.
Wow. So in those solo travels, do you like meet a lot of strangers and then hang around with them for longer and then they've become your friends?
For
Has it happened?
sure. I mean, it has happened. So there was a period of time in my life when I didn't have a job by choice. I had quit my job in the US, and I came back to India, and I traveled to Uzbekistan, Iran, China, and Balkan. So I was in Uzbekistan. There is a city called Khiva, which
Hmm.
is one of the ancient cities on the Silk Road. There was a clock tower where you have a very beautiful sunset with the sun setting on the old city. And then this girl walks up to me and she's like, hey, can you take a picture of me? And I'm like, sure. I took a picture of her. We got talking. We added each other on Instagram, and that was about it. And then when I went to China, she was in Shanghai, and then she showed me around for 3 4 days. So yeah, that happens a lot with me. I met a guy from Sweden in Azerbaijan in one of the walking tours that we just talked about, and then he came over and stayed with me and my family for 7 days in Delhi. And I took him around in Delhi, taking him to Dargah of Nizamuddin Aulia for Qawwali and those sort of things. So yeah, I think I've traveled solo. Even when I don't travel solo, when I've traveled with my friends, I've been able to uh, make friends, meet friends from older times, and it has been extremely rewarding. While I love food, I'm a non-vegetarian, but I can be a little picky. There are certain things that I don't eat and I can't eat. So as I told you, we were in Italy, me and my wife, and we had an old friend. When I say old friend, the person was very young. My friend is very young, but known her for a long time. And then in Italy she was able to find replacement of the food that we couldn't eat. So there is a very famous delicacy made of horse meat, which I didn't want to eat, but she provided an alternative which I would not have been able to, search by myself. So it really helps in those aspects as well.
Always. So if you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
someone who is local, I mean, this really helps. And that's
yeah,
why I asked. So for example, like your friend who came down and stayed with you in Delhi, it would
yeah,
have been so cool. There would have been, I mean, ye Kawali wala jaise experience तुमने बोला. Otherwise,
yeah.
I don't think it'll just pop up in the top 20 things to do or,
True.
5-day itinerary of Delhi. It won't come. So these things are very unique, which only a local will be able to, that to someone like you, because you like to gumify so much, would be able to recommend, which is awesome. Okay,
Right.
now I am jumping straight into the destination you've chosen for today. And the very interesting thing, this is for our listeners, very interesting thing is, so I called up Sharique and I said, listen, I've heard so much about you and I know that you are a avid traveler. And you guys also would have heard the destinations that he just rattled off in the last 10 minutes, like Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Italy, Malaysia. But I mean, mera number of countries, so baap re baap. So I asked him, which country do you want to talk about? And he has given me a list. It's not funny, okay? Like, so then he said, inme se tum chuno. So then, okay, we choose these countries in Latin America, and we're like, okay, chalo, let's talk about this. Suddenly, 3 days back, he says, hey, why not Antarctica? You and I've been to Antarctica. Oh shit, how do I choose any other place over Antarctica? Because Antarctica is like, for me personally, one of like the destinations. Like I'm saving up for Antarctica. So, I mean, I was so lured about Antarctica, but then I had already read so much about the countries that you had finally chosen in Latin America. So I said, nahi yaar, isme to bahut kahaniyan hai. So we are going to be talking about Peru, Bolivia, and Aju-Baju ke countries today. But on the condition that Sharique will be back again with us to talk about Antarctica and maybe many more countries as well. He's rattled off like 3 dozen countries, so maybe many more, but Antarctica for sure. Okay, Sharique, say yes.
Yes.
Ah,
Whatever you
yes.
say.
So on record, you have said yes, okay?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. So tell us. So now we are jumping into your destinations. We know Latin America as a country has crazy history, okay? Like history that has been turned into movies, into books. I mean, it's very rich, and it's there have been so many conquests there. You have ruins, you have history, everything. So I'm assuming you had done this trip when you were in US, right?
Yes. Yes.
How did you choose this region? Because it is also one of the very dangerous regions to travel popularly. I mean, for folks like us who have never been that side of the world, all that we get to see is drugs, cartel, and things like that. So how did you choose? What came to your head? Tell us the whole process of starting of the trip planning and all of it.
So I will go back a few years before I actually went to Latin America. So Latin America is a cultural and geographical space rather than a physical space. So it straddles across 2 continents. Anything below United States is considered Latin America. So Mexico, Cuba, Guatemala, Salvador, going down to Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, and everything. So it's a more of a cultural geographical space rather than a continent or a political entity like a country. And the most weird or unique thing about this space for an Indian is that it was one monolith black box for me, in the sense that there were a lot of things that I knew about it, but I had never met anyone from Latin America. As an Indian, you get to meet Chinese and you have Chinese food every day growing up. China is next door. You know about Europe, you know about Africa and Middle East, and you have like millions of Indians living in Canada and US. But I had
Absolutely.
not met anyone from Latin America, though we love their football. We love Messi, we love Ronaldo, we
Yeah.
love Pele, we love Maradona, we love tacos, we love their music, be it salsa and tango, and we love their dance forms, and we
Oh,
love their
wow.
food.
So true, man. You've rattled off so many things, which is so much of
we
those regions. Yeah.
we love their food. We love tacos, and we love or if not love, we are aware of their political leaders like Guevara. Like you have so many people, wearing his T-shirt in if you go to
Absolutely.
Delhi University, and we know about Narcos. It is one of the most popular, show there is. We know
Absolutely.
um, about all the drugs history of that place, but I had
Mhm.
never met anyone from that place. So I had always wanted to go there, meet people from there, see how it is. And some of the places went, Revati, you would not believe, they told me that I'm the first Indian that they have ever met. Because
Really?
yeah, uh, there were places where people would just look at me, who was this person who walked in the
Wow.
in
And
in the
are
rest.
these like really smaller towns and villages? Or are you talking about like decently known
Mostly
kind
in
of
smaller
places?
towns, but
Okay.
El Salvador is one of the countries that I went to, and even in the capital, people told me that they had never met anyone from India. But one on the flip side is that a lot of Indians can pass by as Latin Americans. Like if you go, they will think that you are from the town next door. Because
Hmm.
our physical features are not very different from them, and if a lot of times people would come up and just talk to you in Spanish. So there are two ends of the spectrum. They When they look at you, they'll think that you are probably from the town next door or the country next door. But when they get to know that you're from India, they'll be like, oh, I've never met anyone from India. So I think the desire had always been there for me to visit this big geographical space. And when I was in the US, I got this opportunity, and I made multiple trips. I've been to Mexico 3 times. I went to Guatemala, El Salvador. I went to Colombia. I went to Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, and then I also went to Buenos Aires when I was going to Antarctica.
So you're giving out such a smile while saying Antarctica, and I'm
Eh,
jealous.
No, we'll be back. We'll talk about it, and hopefully you get to visit
हाँ,
there
उसके
real
पहले मैं
soon.
चली जाऊंगी, हाँ.
Uh, uh,
Sorry, I had to.
no, no. So I'm just saying
You
that
gave out that smile, I had to react.
so when I went to the US, I think I knew that this opportunity is never gonna come by, because this place is very far from India.
Yeah.
There are no direct flights. You have to take 2 to 3 flights to actually get there. It's super expensive, very far. So I didn't want to let go of that opportunity. So I made multiple trips of different duration, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. The trip that we are gonna talk about now, Peru and Bolivia, that was one of the first trips that I made to Latin America. It was a 24 days trip. The reason behind choosing that place was, of course, the image, in your background, Machu Picchu. But the place is a lot more than Machu Picchu. It's like, you come to India for Taj Mahal, and then
Taj
you
Mahal.
find Delhi, and then you find Agra, and then you find Bombay, and then you find Goa, and then you find Kerala, and then you find Calcutta. So I think it was that kind of experience for me. While Machu Picchu is, most definitely, most deservingly one of the wonders of the world, but I had such a great time in those 25, 24, 25 days I spent in these two countries.
Oh man, so cool. So you've like
Yeah.
given full justice to this place, because otherwise
Yes.
a short 5 day, 7 day thing would be like this tick 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 mark. Did you go around saying hola and things like that everywhere?
So so the funny thing is that as I told you, I've been fascinated by this region for a long time. So when I was in undergrad, I did a certificate course in Spanish, which didn't amount to much, but I know the holas and the como estas and the counting, and I could get my pronunciation right. I think
Ah,
so. At least when I'm reading something, I read it the way they would read.
not like namaste, kind
Yeah,
of,
not like
kind of.
namaste. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. So you did know, you did have your homework ready from bachpan for going to
No,
this
yeah,
place.
if you call 19 years old me a bachpan, so yeah, I did this
Okay,
course when I was
Javani.
19. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, man. Very nice. I was going to tell you to rattle off like 5 words, but तुमको तो वो भी पता है. हो गया. Very nice. You're ready for many countries. And so almost all these places you can completely talk in Spanish only and get away.
Yeah, so I think in Latin America, Brazil is the only place where Spanish is not the official language. Portuguese is. But if you know Spanish, you can, Portuguese and Spanish are not very different.
Oh,
But rest of the places have Spanish as their official language.
nice. All
Yeah.
right. Wonderful. So now you have decided to head to this place. You have a 24-day long vacation planned.
Yeah.
So touchdown Latin America.
So we started our trip in Lima, which is the capital of Peru. So it was not a solo trip. I had traveled with my friend. His name is Suhail. I've known him since my undergrad, and he has been part of many trips with me. And this trip, he flew from India.
Ah,
He had to cross, I don't know how many continents. So he flew from Delhi to London, London to Miami, Miami to Lima, while I had a straight Chicago to Lima flight. So
सच्चा दोस्त है ये तुम्हारा देखो.
हाँ, बट वो ट्रैवल के लिए घूम रहा था उसको लगी
शाना
आई
बोल दो
टोल्ड
ना मेरे लिए आया.
नहीं नहीं तो आई थिंक ही डिड बट जब मैंने बोला मैं जा रहा हूँ माचू पिचू तो आई थिंक उससे भी रहा नहीं गया राइट
Nice,
So,
very nice.
and the reason that this trip became so long was कि इतना दूर he was coming, spending so many hours and so much money that we thought कि दो country तो करते हैं, let's do two countries. So we did Peru and Bolivia. The plan was that we will do Peru first and then Bolivia. Another reason is that Machu Picchu is a very closely regulated place. There are only certain tickets that are available to visit every day. So you have to
Oh,
buy tickets. Yeah, you have to buy tickets well in advance. And I think post COVID, that also became even more stringent. So anyone who's planning to travel, they should read up the best time to travel, buy up the tickets well in advance, and then plan the entire trip around that.
oh,
So
interesting.
that's what we had done as well. So we landed in Lima, and then there are steps to get to Machu Picchu, and we'll talk about it when we get there. And if you talk about Lima, you will find everything that you can expect from a Latin American capital city. So when we got to our hostel, they gave us a map, usually the map that you get, and there were areas which were like no go. Don't go to that
Oh,
area. You might not come back.
oh, you might not
Sort
come
of.
back. I thought you get robbed or something.
Yeah.
You might not come back only.
You might not come back, and that is true for a lot of Latin American capital cities. While they do not harm tourists directly, but you never know because there are a lot of gun violence, a lot of drug related crime, there is gang violence, mob violence. So yeah, there are certain areas which are no go, but with a lot of these cities, what they have done is they have been able to demarcate areas which are mostly safe and which are not safe. Fortunately for us, Lima, the historical city center, and the places that we had to go visit were very safe compared to rest of the city. And the rest of the city, while we did not go in there, we could see some of those from far. They would resemble a lot like some of the neighborhoods in India. They will look apna balcony mein, they will be hanging their clothes to dry. So a lot of these cities are very economically unequal. So you will find some of
Okay.
the richest people, millionaires and billionaires, living in the same city with some of the poorest people. So you cross from one neighborhood into the other neighborhood, the types of car, the types of houses, the type of people, the kind of showrooms there are there in one part of the city, they're not there in the other part of the city. And I think that is one of the reason behind all these drug violence and
Hmm.
behind all these gangs and everything.
True, true. Like apna Mumbai kind of feels, na?
Yes. So yeah, we were there for 2-3 days in Lima. Lima is also considered gastronomical capital of Latin America. So they have a lot of fancy restaurants, but even some of the not fancy normal restaurants serving some of the most unique food, and they are also very innovative when it comes to what they are serving on the table. I while I do not remember a lot of the names that
Mm-hmm.
I ate, but the food is very seafood heavy. The food is
Oh.
also very meat heavy, since Lima is on the coast of Pacific Ocean. One of the dishes that I think is one of the best food that I've ever had is ceviche, where they take raw fish and chop fine small pieces of it and serve it with the lime juice, some of the spices, onion, and it is a dish which is very very prevalent across Latin America. You will also find it in Mexican restaurants in the US, but the one that I had in Lima is out of this world. Uh, we had a drink called chicha morada, which
Okay.
is a purple color wine tasting, not alcoholic, which is made from corn, which is also very specific to Lima. Or Peru
Oh,
rather, but it is available in some of the other countries as well.
wow. So if you're talking about Lima and the like you're talking about how you have really upscale places as well as not as much, are they like just like how you see in Bombay where almost coexisting kinds here, or you have regions which are really upscale, and then you go a little farther away, and then you have the poorer areas? Like if you had
No,
to
so I
compare
think
it to some Indian place for us to idea of the layout.
I think Bombay is a good example. You will just, cross from one place to another place and everything will change. And it is possible that the people living in those two neighborhoods have never crossed that boundary. They might have traveled the world, but and I think it is possible for Bombay also. All those people living in upscale,
Yeah.
part of Bombay, they might be, dining and wining in London and New York, and they wouldn't have been to some of the neighborhoods in Bombay. So that is true for Lima also. In Lima, there are two suburbs. One is called Miraflores, the other one is called Barrancos, if I remember correctly. So those are the two neighborhoods which have developed recently. When I say recently, I mean in last few decades, not really last few years. So those two suburbs have come up as the place which are safe, where you have great restaurants and a lot of tourists. And I think safety is one of the biggest parameter when, as a traveler, you go into a country like that. So most of the tourists and travelers stay in those two suburbs, which is a newer part of the city, safer, and all the restaurants and all the food that I talked about is available in those places. But again, those neighborhoods still have that Latin American character. One thing about a Latin American city is that there is always a park. There is a huge park in the center of the city, and everything is built around it. Usually there is a church next to the park, and then the roads going outside, going away from the parks, and then you have commercial area and residential area. So when we first got to Miraflores, where we were staying, these parks had Latin American music. Now I can't, distinguish between a salsa and a bachata and a cumbia, but you had these loudspeakers playing these music, and you have people from the age of, I would say, 18 to 80 dancing with each other on these music,
On the road?
on in the park,
In
in
the
the
park.
central park,
Wow. So
in
it's
the
like a
park.
public place and they're just
It's a
dancing.
public place. Yeah,
So
they're just
fun.
dancing.
So fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh. And do you have like cobbled streets and all that all over?
Yeah, so I think that is there in the center part of the
Okay.
Lima, which is the historical part. One thing very unique about Lima is the balconies. So if you Google about the balconies of Lima, so these are wooden balconies and they are fully covered. So the person standing inside can look outside, but the person on the street can't see who's standing on the balcony.
ऐसे
So it's not
कैसे?
open balcony, so it's just a balcony which is covered from bottom to top, and there are small holes which you can look outside.
Oh.
But of course, someone is standing on the road can't see inside. And me being me, I got to research why is it like this. So it went from Middle East or Arabian world, because Arab world, as you know, is mostly Islamic, and the women inside the house have to do sort of a parda
Oh.
from the outside world. And Spain was ruled for around 1,000 years or 800 years by the Arabs of Morocco. And when the Spanish invaded Latin America, they brought that aspect of Arabian architecture with them to Lima.
How cool is that, man?
Yeah,
मतलब किधर लीमा किधर Middle Eastern culture coming
yeah,
into, yeah. Oh my God. Oh,
yeah,
this is where
yeah.
I remember you telling me that you do have Arabian influence. My God. So do you see this in food as well? Arabian influence?
Not yes and no, not directly, but a lot of these Latin American countries have a lot of Arabian population who had migrated in mass in 19th and 20th century. So you have a lot of Lebanese people in Brazil and some of these places. So while there is some influence, you can right away get Arabian food. You can find shawarma there being served by an Arabian person. But I am not evolved as a food critique to actually find the influence of Arabic food in Latin American food. But one thing that I'll tell you, in if you go to Mexico, you'll find a taco which is called taco el arabes, which is Arabian taco essentially. So when all these Arabians got to Mexico, they started making tacos their own way. So that is called taco
How
el
different
arabes.
is it from regular tacos?
It is
Look
about
at
the meat
least.
that
Ah, it is about the
not
meat.
much, not much. I think it's not very different, but I'm saying that again, you would not expect Arabian influence in Latin America because they are, as you just mentioned, so far away. And a piece of trivia: Shakira is from Lebanese descent. The current president of El Salvador is of Palestinian descent, if I'm not wrong. You have a lot of Palestinians living in Chile. So that's what make Latin America amazing. I mean, there was a huge indigenous population or indigenous civilization which made architecture like Machu Picchu. You had Mayans, and you had Incas, and you had Aztecs, and then you have all these Spanish and Italians and Portuguese people going there and colonizing the place, and then they brought a lot of slaves from Africa. And then you have all these Arabians migrating en masse to Latin America. So you have the indigenous, then you have Spanish, then you have Africans, and then you have a bit of Indians, then you have a bit of Arabs. They heavily influence the music, the culture, the food of that place. So that is one of those aspects of Latin America. While it was not peaceful, but now that it has come together, it gives a completely different blend to everything that comes from Latin America. And but yeah, so it is a lot of people coming from a lot of places, living together, sometimes violently, sometimes peacefully, but making amazing music, amazing food, and great literature.
Man, melting pot, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Real melting pot है. मतलब which countries left वाला अभी Australians ही बाकी वहां पे जाने के लिए वैसे हो गया है. Oh, this is very cool. Wow. I remember you had mentioned something about Latin America and magical realism.
Yeah.
So what is magical realism?
So magical realism is a form of literature that got really popular in the 60s and 70s. There were multiple author who adopted this form of literature, or actually propagated this form of literature. Starting from Mexico, you had authors from Mexico, authors from Guatemala, Colombia, even Argentina, Chile. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez is probably the most famous of these authors, who won a Nobel Prize for literature for his book called 100 Years of Solitude. And surrealism and magical happen in a way that it seems business as usual, if I can use corporate language. So when you pick up one of these books, you'll be reading something surreal, you would be reading something magical, but it would be depicted or projected or written in such a way that you would feel it is completely normal. So this form of literature came from Latin America. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez, in his Nobel winning speech, he mentioned that this could have come only from Latin America, because this is the land where magical seems normal. You will have so many absurdities, as I mentioned. It is there is so much violence, but there is so much dance and music and food, and some of the friendliest people in the world. When you look at the architecture, when you look at the landscape that is there, you have the Andes mountain, you have Salar de Uyuni, you have pink lakes, and in Latin America, some of the animals that you find, alpaca and llama, you don't find anywhere else. So if we wake up one day and if we don't know about these animals and they are walking next to us in India, we'll just feel that we are in a magical land. But when you are in Latin America, it is business as usual. So they say that magical realism could not have come out of any other place except for Latin America, and that's where it came out of. And it completely changed how the world looked at Latin America and Latin American literature.
Oh man, you put that together so beautifully, man. No, and the example that you gave, which completely, I mean, I was wondering, so I knew there was something connected with literature, but what is the connection between, the whole Latin American magical realism?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that it's this whole speech that he gave after
Yeah.
the what, I was not aware of this. This is very, very cool and beautiful example as well. Wonderful. So this is also one reason why, you being a bookworm, this is also one reason why Latin America picked your interest.
So I think it was the other way around, because I was always fascinated with Latin America. I wanted to read more and more of Latin American. When I picked up this book, 100 Years of Solitude, I couldn't read because it was magical realism, and I'm like, what is going on? I just can't read this book. And it took me like 5-7 attempts to read that book, but once I was done with it, it changed my life. I was not the same person after having read it. And then I went back, read some of the other books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
So magical realism is a concept like fiction, non-fiction, that kinds, or
It
what?
is fiction. It is fiction. It is just a story that is going on. But the way it would be written is just beyond magic. Just to give you an example, it would be saying that Revati sent a message through a pigeon and it actually reached Mr. XYZ. So while it does not happen in reality, when you read that book, you will feel that, yeah, it is okay. That's obvious. Like everyone does that. That's nice.
BAU, like you
So
said.
yeah, BAU. And because of the history of Latin America, if you pick up one of these books, it is heavily influenced by the history, be it the colonization, be it the right-wing revolutions or left-wing revolutions, and there had been a lot of coups. It is in the backyard of United States of America, which try to act as the big brother. So there have been a lot of coups, a lot of super brutal, violent uprisings. You have people like Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, and you have a lot of these indigenous people. Their rights are getting trampled by the big American corporate. So they would join all these communist uprising. America wouldn't like it. They would send money to the military. I think there have been more than hundreds coups backed by America throughout Latin America. So when you read these authors, they also point to the violent and the surreal or the absurd history of Latin America, while making it magical as well as real.
Beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
the names that you said, I will definitely put them up on my show notes of this episode. But any more books that you can recommend, do keep them in mind, and I'll definitely ask you towards the end as well. It'll be great. It'll be a great read for folks who are interested to read about general history, of course, with some magic thrown in between.
Sure.
Wonderful. So let us head back to your story about Lima. So you're in Lima, and there's a nice big garden in between. There are people dancing.
Yeah. Of course, we couldn't dance as well as these
Kya
guys.
yaar? Thoda to hil
No.
lete.
We tried, but the way they move, they are able to move every bone in their body in a different way. So yeah, I was there for 3 days. So we didn't do much in the sense that we just went to the old historical city center bunch of times. We roamed around, went to these parks, and one of the things that you will find in Lima is a catacomb. So there is a church. You pay a certain entry fee that you can actually go down beneath the church, and there is these alleyways, and there are bones on both the sides. So skulls and skeletons stacked on top of one another. So these were the people who wanted to get buried under that church. So of course you can't bury all these people. So they just built a catacomb of these people, and these bones are still there, and it is super eerie. There are some of the other catacombs. There is a catacomb in Paris as well, but the thing about this catacomb is that it is not that popular. So a lot of times you'll just find yourself with all these bones from hundreds of years ago, which have been stacked there in a very nice way, bone over bone over bone, skull over skull over skull.
And like they made a mandala design of it, kinds.
So my brain was ceased to work at that point in time. So I don't know the design that it was kept in, but there were like thousands of bones from last 4 or 5 centuries just stacked on top of one another underneath this church, and you are just walking through it, and it was the most again, it was the most surreal thing, but it was real. So
God.
Coming back to that point again.
I read about this catacombs in Lima, and I've also read that there are people who have experienced souls floating around, and that's made it even eerier. Oh my God. So you should give a pro tip that if you're going to the catacomb, koi group tour pakado bhai. Akele bapre, it's not a.
But the funny thing is that the people, the locals around. So we did talk to a few locals around, and they're like, yeah, we saw souls floating around, and I'm like, what? And again, to them, it's normal. They're like, yeah, it's a church, it's a catacomb. There are a lot of people, buried there with all their bones and everything visible, and they leave the catacomb at night and they float around and we see them, and there was no humor in it. It was just like if I would see a person walking across me, that's how they were talking about it.
Like, duh, obviously milega tumko.
और मिला तो क्या हुआ, वो तो है, बस जो है वो है.
Oh, I am extremely fond of horror movies, but
fortunately we didn't see anything.
Or unfortunately, वरना एक मस्त वाला story आ जाता Sharique.
Day 2 of our trip, we definitely didn't want to start with a ghost story.
But there is no violent story behind this catacomb, right? It's people who wanted to be
Yeah,
buried
yeah,
under
yeah,
the under the church or cathedral that's there, kinds.
there is no violent story to it.
Did you go with your friend to the Lovers Park? There is a Lovers Park there.
So we went to a few parks. So I think that it is called Lovers Park, but it's like, just another park with
It's got a
music
very,
going on.
a statue which is जिसको देख के कुछ ideas आ सकता है. ऐसे मैंने फोटो में देखा है.
I don't remember.
Oh,
Okay.
there's a cat park, there's a Lovers Park, all these kind of names there. But the view of the ocean from this is apparently very, very beautiful.
So it is, and just the whole city is. I think it would be wrong to compare with Marine Drive, because Marine Drive is much more developed and it's I think prettier. But the road going from Lima through the suburbs of Miraflores and Barrancos, there is Pacific Ocean on one side, and Lima is much more hilly compared to Bombay. So you have different elevation. So it is very, very pretty. But one thing about Lima is that through most of the year it is covered in a very depressing fog. So yeah, we were there for 3 days. We didn't see the sun. I think the January December period is the sunny period for them, but we went there in August. That was very, very gloomy, and a sheet of fog hangs over the city throughout. That gives a very depressing feel to the city.
Yeah. It's like one of those, they call it the London kind of weather, no? Always, or the Seattle kind of weather, always little bit thanda thanda, little drizzly, cloud, gray, and all of it. Wonderful. So that was Lima. But did Lima live up to its capital of the country kind of feel?
It did to an extent. So Lima does not have a highlight, in the sense that while the historical city center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and it's very beautiful with all its balconies and everything, and it is a good starting point for Latin America, because it is full of the images that you would look at, Google, if you Google Latin America or stuff like that, with yellow walls and red walls with those windows and the daily chaos of the city. So it's a good city to just go spend a couple of days, get the vibe, Chicago, bye bye, come to Latin America. So in that sense, it's a great place to be. But we didn't have a lot of expectations, because again, it's not it does not occur very highly on a list of a traveler. So it
come here,
fulfilled our
finish your
expectation, and
get
move on
over
to the
your
next
sleep
city.
deprivation from your long flights, and then move ahead to more interesting places.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes,
so
yes.
from Lima, where next?
So we went to Cusco. So Cusco is the cultural capital of Peru. It was also the capital of the Incas when they were ruling this place, and when they were building architecture or palaces like Machu Picchu. And it's one of the most beautiful cities that you will ever go to. So they, of course, the Spanish colonizer, they destroyed the city, or over a period of time it got destroyed, but they used the architecture or the foundations of the Incan city to build their city. So you will find these Spanish colonial architecture, but when you look on the ground level, you'll find the foundation of the Incan city there. So it is
Which is what?
Spanish, which is like big stones, huge stones, the ones that you would see in Machu Picchu, for instance. So that was Incan architecture. They didn't use a lot of cement kind of stuff to their architecture was more of a puzzle kind of a thing. So they will put the rock and cut the rock in a way that it will become like a puzzle that will not fall apart,
like
so
interlocking kind of
interlocking kind of architecture.
Wow.
So you'll find, you look at you're walking on the street, these are cobbled streets, and then you have the foundations of these big massive stones, and on top of that you have all these usual administrative building of Spanish era. And there is a beautiful open square in the middle, and there is a fountain in the center of this square. And then when you walk away from this square, there are radial roads which will take you higher into the mountains. And when you look down at the city, it's the most pretty sight that ever is, or that I have ever seen while traveling.
Oh man, so it's like layers of history there itself, right?
Yes,
ऊपर में एक अलग दिख
yes.
रहा है, नीचे में it's Incan, architecture or whatever they call it. Tell us something more about the Incas, no? Because you were there, you would have heard some stories about them, their history, or what is their story? What is the story of the Incas and the Incan capital and all of it?
Yeah, so as we talked earlier, there were three great civilizations in Latin America before the arrivals of Europeans. There were Aztecs in Mexico. You have Mayans in Central America, and Incas in Peru. So they ruled a huge swath of land, starting from Colombia, then Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. But their capital was Cusco, as I mentioned some time ago. It was indigenous Latin American civilization, but one of the most unique things about them was that there was no written language. So while we know a lot about them from the Spaniards, but there is no written record of the Incas, they had a very unique system of writing where they would put knots in ropes. So
Okay.
so they would, maybe the way three knots signify a word or something like that. That was their written language, which of course did not
Oh,
last. So we do not know a lot about them, but we still have a lot of architectural remnant of what they built. Their end was very tragic. There was a civil war, and there was a pandemic, most likely smallpox, which had come from Central America. Again, it had come from Europe, it came to Central America, it came to Peru, or the Incas. A lot of people were dying. I think there were two siblings or two cousins fighting for the throne at that point in time. And that's when this Spanish guy called Claudio Pizarro lands in Peru with just 170 people. Can you imagine? 170 people. And I think there were some 30 odd horses. And there were a lot of moments in his journey that he could have been wiped out, but he
hmm,
would, avoid confrontation, ended up in Lima. He kidnapped, I think, one of those two people fighting for the throne,
hmm.
uh, demanded a huge ransom where, there were rooms full of gold, which was given to them.
Oh
He
man.
did, yeah, he took all that gold. He did not release that the ruler, or the son of the ruler who was fighting for this civil war, and eventually had him killed. He had one thing, or two things rather, which the Incas did not, which one of them was horses, the other was guns. And on the basis of these two things, he was able to end the entire civilization and bring that,
Wow.
all that gold and all that land under the Spanish rule.
What a
So
story.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God. We could have gone Uncle Scrooge kinds diving into the room full of
Yeah, 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 yeah.
gold.
So at that point in time, the Spanish kings were doing that. So
Oh
coming back to
man.
Cusco,
Yeah.
I didn't tell you that I met an old friend
Hmm.
in Cusco who was just by chance in Cusco. Her name is Zuki. She's from Indonesia. I had met her when I was living in India. There is an app called Couchsurfing. I'm sure you are aware of it.
Yes, yes, yes.
She was in India. She just was looking for a bed to crash, and I said, if you want, you can come. I live with my parents. She came home, and she ended up becoming like friends with my mom. Like they would be, cooking food together.
How
I was like,
sweet. Wow.
she stayed with us for 15 odd days, and I would go to work. She would be just staying with my mom, and she had learned Hindi by then. She's one of those people who would go to a place and live for 6 months. So
Oh, nice.
when I went there in Cusco, she was living in a farm taking care of sheep for someone living in Lima. So this person in Lima had a huge sheep farm. This girl from Indonesia was living without running water, without electricity, and she is aeronautical engineer by education when she was
What?
living in Jakarta, and she had been living in the countryside of Cusco for 6 months, taking care of sheep without running water, without electricity. And I'm like, how do you, live? She's like, once a week, I go charge my phone, charge my portable charger. That lasts me a week. There is a running stream near her farm, or whatever you want to call it. She would just go carry a bucket of water in the morning, do her, the daily chores, and then a little bit of water to cook her food. And she is living by herself. Now she has moved on. The last I talked to her, which was a few years ago, she was living in Minnesota with, again, another family. But this time she was just living alone. And I just texted her that, hey, I'm also in Cusco. And she came down and she took us to one of these mercado. So mercado is like a bazaar, or
Mm-hmm.
a market. You find all kind of stuff, but there is usually a place dedicated to food.
Okay.
And again, Latin America, all kind of food is there which I do not eat, but her being there, and again, knowing her, I knew that she would have learned Spanish by now. So we went to one of these, a hole in the wall kind of restaurant, and they served, if I have to convert that to an Indian dish, it was rice, it was
Mm-hmm.
masoor ka dal and fish curry,
Okay.
and it was a finger licking good food, no pretentiousness, but like amazing food. And then we roamed around entire day, and then she took us to some of these other places. We tried different desserts and different food, which again I had not known, but she had been living there for 6 months. And then we talked about how is it, living with the sheep and alone. And to this day, I cannot fathom someone coming from a city like Jakarta, which is like Bombay and Delhi, I don't know, 20
It's
million people living.
crazier. Jakarta is
Yeah,
crazier than that.
yeah, 20 million people living there, an aeronautical engineer living in countryside of Cusco, taking care of sheep.
Like, what
So
does
yeah,
she know of sheep to take care of sheep, man?
I
I
don't know,
don't
but
know. This
yeah,
is so cool.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I've said this before as well that, when I travel, I have a tendency to talk to a lot of people. So if I'm say on a group tour or any kind of tour, I'll definitely catch hold of some three or four and I'll ask, what are you up to? What do you do? And things like that. I have, except once, I have never heard anyone saying that I'm in a regular kind of a job. जैसे हम लोग रेगुलर काइंड ऑफ जॉब में होते हैं ना, हम लोग कहीं विल वर्क इन लाइक एन एक्सेंचर और लाइक इन्फोसिस,
I know,
अमेज़न, ऐसे
I
कुछ
know.
तो कभी नहीं एक बार आई फाउंड समवन, I work in Amazon there. That, just once. I have found like forest fighters. I have found, I have come here. I'm from Australia. I just came to, this was, I think, Thailand. I just came to this particular island and I went on a boat tour. प्यार हो गया मुझे ये जगह से, तो मैंने बोट खरीद लिया और now
मैं
I'm
यहीं बस गया.
मैं यहीं
I
बस
know,
गया. So
I
we went
know.
on his boat for a tour. यहीं बस गया. I mean, ऐसे लोग ही दिखते हैं, कोई भी कॉर्पोरेट वाले कभी भी नहीं मिले हैं. I mean, and this girl, she has a very vanilla education, right? She's an aeronautical engineer, which many
Yes,
people
yes.
here would be. But going like this and being in a sheep farm is like nuts. It's so cool. I mean, it sounds very cool to me, but I don't think living there is anything like I could do. But I find this, there's a flowing stream and she's going there and she's having
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bath.
yeah.
Oh yeah, this sounded so perfect, man. It was so
But I don't
perfect.
think I can live by myself more than
I
a
don't
few
think I
days.
can either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without, and there will be no internet. There will be no, there is no electricity.
You don't have Kindle, yeah, Sharique. How will you
Yeah,
manage?
yes, yes, yes.
Oh
But
man,
again, this her name is Zuki. She's one of the most compassionate person you will find. So
I
when there
love
was
it, man.
when there was earthquake in Nepal, she just flew in. So she had spent some time in Nepal, and for her, some time usually goes into months and years,
6 months
unlike us.
only.
Yeah, so she knew Nepal very well. And then when there was earthquake in Nepal, she flew all the way from Indonesia,
Mm.
spent again few months just helping the locals out in whatever way she could help. So she's one of those people. The kind of life that she's living, or she has been living. I haven't been in touch with her for a while now, but yeah,
Oh, I'd love to talk to her, man. Sharique, try and get
yeah.
back in touch with her
Yeah,
and
yeah,
connect
that
me.
I think
It'll be
then
so
you
nice.
you might have a 20 hours long podcast.
How lovely would that be? How lovely would that? I'll break all records.
Yeah,
And you had her take you to the most local kind of places because hole in
yeah,
the wall kind of cafes are the best possible. I
yeah,
mean, I'm
yeah.
not those Michelin star ones and all. I'm not the Michelin star kinds at all. I love hole in the wall. Of course, going there and asking for, please give me vegan food, vegetarian food is troublesome. I still do it. I still do it. Wonderful. So then,
What else did you do there?
We also walked out of the city. There were farms, there are some historical monuments when just climb up from the city. So this city is in the valley sort of a
okay.
place. So whichever way you just walk up, you'll just keep gaining altitude. So one of these places is a historical monument, again built by the Incas. And you have all these alpacas roaming around. Alpacas are animals which you would have heard. They are somewhat like horses, but a little bit smaller. And they are weird in the sense that they will just come and sort of sneeze slash spit on you.
What?
Yeah.
I was going
So
to think you're saying cuddle or something like
no,
that.
no, no. So they are the cutest animal, and you might want to cuddle them, but they will come and spit slash sneeze on you. So you have to keep your distance. Uh,
Oh.
but yeah. So there are two different animals. One is called llama and one called alpaca. They are very, very similar to each other. The way I wouldn't call horse and donkey because they are much more similar, but that is sort of the good analogy that you can have.
Got it. Because I mean, and this region has both llamas and alpacas, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
you see
yes.
them freely walking on the roads in places like
Yeah,
Cusco
yeah,
and all.
yeah, yeah. Just like the way we see cows and dogs roaming around the streets of India.
And do you find them cute?
Yeah, yeah. Apart from the fact that I couldn't get close to them because I just thought that I don't want to get spat upon by these cute animals.
Oh man, I'm a very animal person. I might just go and pat. I'll maybe cover my face something and just go and pat or something. मुझे बहुत cute लगते हैं. Oh
So
man.
again, I just want to add that while they were cute, we did eat them in
Ah,
in
tell
in
us about it.
Cusco.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
How is it? How is the meat? How do they do it? Do you find the meat locally or do you have to go to Michelin
No,
star
no. So
kind
it
of
is, it is, it
places?
is. No, no. It is very common. You will find in different forms. You can find it
Hmm.
grilled. You can find it in steak
Oh,
form. So one of the nights we went to a restaurant on the Cusco Square where you had these alpaca steaks. So we tried them. It is very tender. It is almost slightly sweet. It was good, but again, when you're trying a different kind of meat, it takes a while to get used to it.
yeah.
But we also got to know that there is an fusion Indian restaurant, and we thought like, yeah, we should try. We are here, and when we went there we found a dish called alpaca korma. So korma is a very famous Indian non-veg curry which is usually cooked with mutton or chicken, but it being in Cusco they had done fusion with alpaca meat in it, so we also had that alpaca
Nice.
korma. Yeah, it was good. Again, it was good. It took us a while to get used to that taste, but then again, I would not swap our mutton korma for an alpaca korma ever.
Oh, ever बोल दिया तुमने.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Cusco is at an altitude, as I mentioned. It is in a valley, and I don't remember the altitude, maybe 2,000 meters or slightly above that. So a lot of people start having altitude sickness
I
from
read
there
about
only.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the cure is coca leaves. These are local leaves. You just take them and keep it on the side of your cheek, the way you do gutka or pan in India. But the thing is that these coca leaves, when they are processed, they become cocaine. So that is the funny part, but it is also the tragic part because the locals have been using coca leaves in a lot of spiritual as well as practical usage. So when you keep it on the side of your teeth and between your teeth and cheek, it helps you fight altitude sickness. It is used in medicinal form, but lately it has been used as cocaine, and the war on drugs has in a way destroying the traditional way of life of people living there, and that is happening throughout a lot of communities in Latin America. But to us at that point in time, it was very funny thing that you are chewing the leaves, which eventually end up being cocaine, and it does give you a momentarily
I was going to
high.
ask you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you eat it, and it just like for 5-10 seconds, you're like, wow, and then you come back,
Oh.
and then
Oh,
the
5, 10
altitude
seconds only.
yeah, yeah. But I didn't want to do much more than
True.
that for the
Hmm.
obvious reason. I just wanted to, cure the altitude sickness.
Okay.
But Cusco is still not at such a high altitude. The Machu Picchu trail starts from Cusco, so
Yeah.
a lot of people spend a lot of time in Cusco just to acclimatize
Acclimatize
themselves,
themselves.
and
Yeah.
then they begin the trek to
Yeah.
Machu Picchu.
So this place is also like heavily historical, right? So when you are exploring Cusco, what kind of history do you actually see in the city?
As I mentioned, so this was the city which was Incas. Then this was also the city which was the capital of the Spanish colonial empire for a while before they moved it to Lima. So it is there in the layers of the city itself. If you look at a lot of buildings around the square, the foundations or the first few feet of the building would have remnant structure from the Incas time, as we talked about the interlocked stones, and then on top of that you have these Spanish building which is very common throughout Latin America, but this is one of very few places where you see history moving from Incas to the Spanish.
Yeah, that's really cool,
Yeah,
man, in layers.
and that you will find across cities that there was a Spanish or there was an Incan temple, and then the Spaniards destroyed that temple and built their own churches on top of the same buildings. So you will find this city after city. And the religion in Latin America, while it is very, very Catholic, because of the Spanish rule, they still carry a lot of indigenous practices, especially the indigenous people. Of course, the people who migrated from Europe continue to be more Christian than the local people, but the local people continue to have their indigenous religion. They have their own practices, which they continue to do along with being a practicing Catholic Christian.
From the videos that I saw, you do see a lot of them in especially in the markets and all of it. Their clothes are so different and so colorful looking. So you do see a lot of them around as well, right? It's not like it's just Europeans or those folks around
No, no.
things.
So you don't, and I think so. A lot they have been together for centuries now. So there are a lot of mixing that has happened, and there is a name for all of them. There is the offspring of a European and indigenous person is called by one name. The spring of European and African person is
Acha,
called by one name, and the indigenous and African
do you
kid is
know
known
any
by
of
one
these
name. So there are
names?
names like there are names like mulattoes and mestizos, I think. It again, when Europeans were there, it is a very racialized societies with the whites being on the top, and then there were layers of these
Always.
different kind of intermixing people. But again, it is very, very interesting. If I talk about another country, Colombia, Cartagena, one of the cities on the port, it on the sea, it was a very big port where a lot of slaves were brought. So Cartagena is predominantly a black city, but when you go to Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia, you see a lot of Europeans, because that's where the Europeans ruled from. So you will find the remnant of history in the races of the people. There are certain countries where the indigenous people have been wiped out, Argentina being one of them, because at one point in time there was a war and they had sent all the indigenous people to war, so a lot of them died. So Argentina is mostly a white country. Brazil had a lot of slaves coming from Africa,
Oh,
so you'll find a lot of black people in Brazil. So you would find, I have a friend there, she's from Venezuela. One of her brother has curly hair, the other has blue eyes.
oh
So there
man,
are
this
so
is so
many.
cool.
Yeah, so there are so many.
ऐसे कुछ होने से 15 बच्चे करने का, so you can see, oh my god, this was not one right there.
Not a lot. No, so I'm just saying there were 4 or 5 siblings she had. But yeah, that is what Latin America is for you.
Oh my god, this is fascinating. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just not like you're walking around, you see the melting pot, you actually see it within a
yeah,
family itself.
yeah.
Oh, so cool. Okay, so this was walking around Cusco. What about day trips from Cusco? Of course, we'll come to Machu Picchu exclusively later.
So we did Sacred Valley and some of the alpaca farms while coming back from Machu Picchu, because I told you Machu Picchu had a fixed date for the ticket. So we took a train, and the train also get sold out really soon. So we had to build a trip around the Machu Picchu day of visit. So from
Okay.
Cusco, we went straight to a place called Aguas Calientes.
How do you go there?
We took a train. We took a
Okay.
train from Cusco to Aguas Calientes. Aguas Calientes literally means hot water. Agua is water. Caliente is hot. So there was a hot spring at that place. It is one of the most unremarkable places. Why?
I was so
Yeah.
excited you're saying hot spring, man.
No, so there was a hot spring at some point in time, but it is
Okay.
just a gateway to Machu Picchu. I've heard that the Machu Picchu trail in itself, or the Inca trail in itself, is extremely beautiful, and if someone gets a chance, they should definitely do it. But as I mentioned, that it got sold out. It gets sold out really fast. I think it gets sold out a year in advance.
Oh, even the
So
trail.
we, yeah.
Oh, I thought
So
just tickets to enter Machu Picchu or something with
no,
the
no,
trail.
no, even that.
Because it's a
So
4-day long trail, right?
yeah. And it can
Yes.
be done only through a guided tour. So you have to be part of a group tour. So we couldn't buy the ticket, so we had to opt for the train. The train is beautiful. There is a river going alongside, and then the mountains, the Andes, and it slowly chugs along and climbs the altitude and gets to Aguas Calientes. It's a very touristy town. There is no reason for this town to exist apart from being a getaway to Machu Picchu. And then, should we go to Machu Picchu now? Are you ready for it?
Yes, I'm the full on ready,
Yes.
man.
So
Ooh.
so you have to take a bus ride. We wanted to see sunrise at Machu Picchu. We didn't come this far to see Machu Picchu full of crowd, and
Yes.
not while the sun is rising. And then we asked around that we have, भैया अपने को माचू पिच्चू जाना है, सुबह 7 बजे पहुंचना है. तो उसने बोला आप 2 बजे आ जाना.
I
So
like
we
how you
woke up.
suddenly shifted to Hindi. You used to at least say, Hola, bhaiya.
the, we woke up at 1:30 a.m. and we got to the queue for the buses at 2 a.m. and there were already 700 people waiting for the bus.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Very
And
enthusiastic Janta.
and then bus by bus, so I think the bus starts at 5 a.m, so we waited from 2 a.m to 5 a.m there. And then first bus came, and then whatever 50-60 odd people got on it, and then it left, and then our was bus number 10. But when we got there, it was still not crowded, because thousands and thousands of people get there. It is same like Taj Mahal. If you go at 2 in the afternoon, it will be completely different than going at 6 in the morning, while there will still be people there, but not as much. So when we got there, it was still dark. You could see Machu Picchu surrounded by mountains, and the first feeling that you have when you get there is just of awe, that you
Oh,
made it
man.
all the way growing up in India, this being one of the wonders of the world, built by the Incas. And while Machu Picchu
Oh,
is extremely,
I'm getting goosebumps, man.
and it is so beautiful, but the setting, I mean, it is surrounded by these mountains. The mountains behind it, I think it's called Huyana Pichu, if I'm not wrong. And it's in that backdrop, and it's just incredible. So you are just standing there in awe for first 7-8 minutes, and then you're like, okay, take a picture, I just want to stand here. And I don't want to, your family back home is waiting for these pictures, you have to put these on Instagram and everything.
Oh, yes,
But I think
yes.
anyone going there, it's impossible that they will not be in awe for the first 7, 8, 10 minutes. And then the sun rises behind the mountains, and you have those first rays of sun falling on Machu Picchu. And then it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. So the building that you first saw at 5 or 6 a.m in the morning is very different from what you see at 8 in the morning, because now it's completely glowing, basking in the glory of being Machu Picchu in bright August sun. And then we had also bought the ticket to climb the Montaña. So Montaña literally means mountain. So there's a mountain right in front of Machu Picchu. So you hike to the top of it. So it's just looking at Machu Picchu from different altitudes. And that's when you realize how high you are in the sense of altitude. And Machu Picchu itself is at such a height, and it is surrounded by mountains. So it is in like a mini valley sort of thing, and there is nothing around it, surrounded by mountains. And with every 10 minutes, when you look back at Machu Picchu, the altitude has changed. You might have climbed 20 odd meters, but it just gives you a completely different perspective. So it was like a bird's eye view of Machu Picchu. And then you again start climbing down, and then you stop at every step. You just don't want to miss out on it. But you come
Yes.
back. By then it's already noon, and then the sun is on top of Machu Picchu. And again, it's a completely different building, because now there are no shadows, because the sun is at the top, and it is at its brightest. The stones are also sort of shining, and the green color of the mountains around is much more brighter. So I think anyone planning to go to Machu Picchu, of course, if you can do the trail, that is definitely amazing. We've heard people crying, because when you hike for 4 days and you see it for the first time, and I can understand if you end up crying. But even for us, spending like six hours in and around the vicinity of that mount structure is nothing less than moving, because it's
Magical
not just
realism.
magical realism, because it's not just the architecture. The setting is unparalleled. There is no other building like that anywhere in the world, and that's why it is one of the wonders of the world. Yeah.
Oh. So this place that you hike up, it's not the Huayna Pichu Trail, is it?
So there are, again, there are three tickets that you have to buy. One is of course Machu Picchu, and then along with you can buy Huyana Picchu.
Yeah.
Again, even after trying months in advance, we couldn't buy the ticket for that. But we did buy the one for Montaña, which is literally the mountain. It is much taller
Okay.
in front of Machu Picchu. The advantage of climbing Montana is that, as I mentioned, you get different views of
Hmm.
Machu Picchu from different altitude. While I'm sure Huayna Picchu also gives great views,
Hmm.
but we could have chosen one, so we opted for Montana. The other one was not available in any case. And one thing is that the hike is slightly steep.
I was going
So
to ask. So I
yeah,
have actually seen videos of the
yeah,
Huayna Picchu trail, and
yeah,
apparently it's almost vertical. So when you're climbing, you
yeah.
actually have to climb on your fours.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
at some point in time my knees started shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a steep mountain like this, and then you are
Wow.
going around it, and it's just 2 3 feet wide, so people are also coming from the other side. And but yeah,
No,
and I
man, it's
climbed back
quite
down.
intense. Even the Machu
Yeah,
Picchu
yeah,
trail, the 4 day the whole trail, it's supposed to be very challenging, but like you said, very
yeah.
rewarding. People cry, and even I've read of stories of people, crying when they actually reach Machu Picchu. But that's one way in which you can actually reach Machu Picchu before the tourists come, because
Yes.
when you're staying at the campsite the previous night, they stay not too far from Machu Picchu itself, so they actually can manage to reach before the 700 people reach, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So now what they have done is that they have divided the visit in two halves, so you can buy a morning ticket or a afternoon
Ah,
ticket.
okay. So
So
how
anyone
long
planning.
can you stay when you are going in the morning ticket, suppose?
So when we were there, I think we could have stayed the entire day, which we
Okay.
didn't. Of course, we came down around 2 to 2:30.
Hmm.
But now I think if you're buying a morning ticket, you can stay till noon, and then the second half starts. One of
Right.
the cool things is that there is a small kiosk where there is a stamp which you can put on your passport, which just says there is a silhouette of Machu Picchu, and then it says Machu Picchu on the circle around the structure. So yeah, we stamped our passports with Machu Picchu. Yeah, I've been there.
Send me the picture, please.
I
I
will.
want to
I
see
will.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about Machu Picchu. So, what is the story of Machu Picchu? How is it? So, we have seen pictures and not the up close and personal kinds. So, tell us about Machu Picchu.
So again, the funny thing is that we do not know a lot about Machu Picchu because, as I mentioned, the Incas they did not leave any written records. While their architecture was very heavy on stones, I don't think they put any scriptures on stones like a lot of Indians, even
Hmm.
Islamic architecture put a lot of scriptures on stones,
Yes.
but they did not do it. So what we have of Incas are just the stone structures. And the sad thing about it is that when they were probably living in these palaces, they were curtains and wooden roofs and
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of different textiles and a lot of different kind of materials being used to build up the entire structure, but all of it is gone now because of ravages of time. All we have is the stone structure. There is a guess that it was a summer palace for the kings or the royal family living in Cusco, and they would come here during the summer in the nice cool breezy air of the mountains.
And 4 days of
and
hiking also.
and for 4 days, I'm pretty sure they would have some people carrying them on their kandhas.
Palanquins and all that. Yes.
Yeah, palanquins. Yeah, and the funny thing about Machu Picchu is that, like most of the structures of this kind, it was lost to the outside world. We didn't know about it. When I say we the people not living there, of course, the locals
True.
were aware of it, but the outside world did not know about it until unless I think 1920s or 1910s, when one of European discovered it and wrote about it, and then it became popular. So it was still the most intrepid travelers who would go there, till again it became wonder of the world. And the Peruvian government wanted to mint money out of it, so they built all these trains. So initially you
Yeah.
could only trek there. There was no system of train. Of course, you get to Cusco and then you have to hike up to Machu Picchu, but now the trains are there. I think there was a plan of building a airport in the vicinity as well. I'm not
Oh,
sure if they have gone ahead because people were worried about the conservation status of Machu Picchu. But yeah, it being a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it is being all the efforts are being made to conserve it. And I'll repeat my words. The feeling that you get when you are standing next to it, when you are actually touching those stones, is just of awe, because you made it there, and then you just imagine you haven't slept. You
hmm.
literally haven't slept because you wake up at 1:30 in the morning and you have done a hike where your knees were shaking. But once you come back from that hike, and then that you are probably never gonna see it again, because
Yeah.
am I going to fly to Lima and Cusco and then do it all over again? I hope so, but I do not know. And then you don't want to leave that place. You just want to keep looking back at it every time when you are leaving. I went outside, got that passport stamped, and we were to leave, but I went back. I'm like, no, I'm gonna have another look at it. And then
Oh, man.
eventually we had to leave, because the way down is the similar. You have to wait for a bus, the bus will come, you go to Aguas Calientes, and then your journey back to Cusco starts.
On the same day itself.
It's up to you. When we went, we stayed in Aguas Calientes for 2 days because of the timing of the train. But when we were coming back, we started the same day.
So you said that you got your passport stamped with one Machu Picchu stamp. I'm jealous.
Can you make out structures like in a room or a hall or something, when you're going around this entire ruins? Because this was probably a palace kinds, right?
It is a remnant of a palace. So
Okay.
you see doors and you see windows. As you mentioned, there are no roofs.
Hmm.
I think my assumption is that it was wooden roofs, because most of the structure at that point in time had wooden roofs. So there are stairs. So you have, when you are walking around, it is very similar to walking around ruins that you would, I don't know, maybe you talk about Purana Kila in Delhi.
Hmm.
So there is not much, but you are still getting an idea that you're walking from, one room to another room. It's just that it is much more compact. It
Okay.
is on top of a mountain, but you have stairs, you have rooms, windows, you have doors, and there is a certain trail that you can walk. You can't go everywhere, because again, it is part of, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They're trying to conserve it, but you can be, and you are very up personal and up close with these structures. And then you have alpacas roaming around, and
That is like
you
no
take
picture,
those.
right?
Yeah. You have, that is the picture. I have this picture hanging in my house. I got it printed.
Oh, और
So
कितना
you have.
जलाओगे यार? मार दो मुझे बस.
So
Send
yeah,
us a picture, please.
sure, I'll do that.
Hmm.
I'll do that. So again, you walk around, you get up close and personal. But again, it's one of those places where the feeling being inside Machu Picchu is very different from maybe just being 100 meters away, because 100 meters away it's the picture of your dream, with Huana
Yes,
Picchu rising behind you, and this picture you have seen thousands of times. But when you
absolutely.
go and walk next to it, it is a completely different structure. It becomes more real. It comes out of your dreams, like when you are
Hmm.
standing away and when you are looking at it from the distance. It is still a palace, or still a structure that you have just dreamt about visiting for all
Yeah.
these years. But when you go and touch those stones, it becomes much more real. The feeling of awe never leaves. Just being there is such an awesome thing. But yeah, I think just walking around, and then you see alpacas just walking and grazing and eating grass, and then it becomes much more real.
So many, first question after this is, do you need a guide to take you around Machu Picchu?
So we opted for a guide. You do not need a guide, but again, the guide, they will tell you a lot about Inca's history, and there is nothing certain about Machu Picchu, but
Yeah.
they will talk a lot about the context, what Incas were, a little bit about the history of Incas that we just talked about, the Spanish invasion, and it becoming part of the Spanish colonial empire. So they will talk a lot about it. They will talk about the architecture that we just mentioned, the interlocking of the stones. So they'll talk a lot about it. They will talk about the Incas king, their chronology, when the civil war started, when the
Oh,
Claudio Pizarro came, and
deep
what all
dive.
happened. Deep dive, because there
Hmm.
is not much known about
Correct.
Machu
It's all different
Picchu per se.
interpretations of
Yes, yes,
things,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
So it
yes.
is recommended to take a guide just for
Yeah,
knowing stories.
yeah,
I always like stories, man.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
whether
yeah.
it is true or not true or closest to the truth or whatever, it's nice.
And I think the guides are the locals from
Hmm.
around that place, so it is always good to interact and ask questions. And you can ask how many people visit, how long have you been doing it, what all
Correct, correct,
languages do
correct.
you speak, and those sort of
हाँ, मुझे
things.
बहुत अच्छा लगता है ऐसे पूछने में.
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ,
Nice, man. And these guys are all, I mean, since it's a
yeah.
UNESCO site, they are all certified and all of it.
Authorized, yeah, certified, yes,
Authorized
yes,
ones.
yes.
I've also heard that there have been a lot of tourists who go there and they just see Machu Picchu completely covered in cloud. Completely in clouds, like, and they have not even had the luck that the clouds or the fog clears. So they never get the picture of Machu Picchu with the like the one that I have behind me in the image. So you were
It happened
lucky.
that we were, but when we got there in the morning, it was, as I mentioned, it's still pretty dark, and there was some cloud in the sky, and I was very scared. I'm like, what if it is? So while it was not cloudy in the sense we could see Machu Picchu, but we could not see in the way it is in your picture, in your background. It was pretty dark. I'll share that picture with you as well. But when the sun came out, the clouds, went away, and then we got to see Machu Picchu in all its glory.
And the contrast between the brown of the stones and the green of the grass and that mountain
and the
blue of the sky. Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who like to see a building in different, especially these buildings, in different hues at different times of the day. I believe even Taj Mahal, it's very beautiful at 6 in the morning. The sun rises from one side, it gets golden. The other side is slightly bluish, and then it, starts shining completely in the full sun. So something similar happens with Machu Picchu as well.
Oh, very, very magical, man. Okay, I don't feel like finishing this Machu Picchu topic itself. It's so nice. But anyway, we have to head out from Machu Picchu. So then you take the bus back to base camp.
Aguascalientes. Yes, we take the bus to Aguascalientes. We have to go back to Cusco, but that's when we decided to stop in a couple of places. One of those places is called Aliantentambo. I love this name. It's called Aliantentambo. It's one of the stops between Aguascalientes and Cusco. So Sacred Valley is nothing. It is just the valley of the river flowing through that region. So the Incas, while they had their capital in Cusco and they had their summer palace in Machu Picchu, but of course they were ruling a much bigger, broader area. So you will find small palaces and their farmlands. You will find different structures which were built by Incas. Sometimes you'll have to hike up to them. Sometimes you will find them right then and there.
And these are all historical ruins.
Historical ruins, and as I mentioned, that all of these towns are built on the top of Incan's ruin. So you will find a square which was a square at time of Incas, but now the new city is living there, or the new city is built there. The square is still there. You will find a church where you will have the ruins of Inca temples all around it. There are certain farmlands which are being used since the time of Incas. One very peculiar to me, not to them, happened. We were in one small village, and it was at a very high altitude, and I was out of my breath because of the altitude. And there was a very beautiful church on the top of the mountain. This village was also on the top of a mountain. We went inside the church with white colored architecture, and you had all these ruins of Incas, and you could see Andes, snow covered mountains all around you. And then I hear this band baja barat.
What?
Yeah, I hear like ड्रम बज रहे हैं, फ्लूट बज रहा है, और लोग वो सिम्बल बजा रहे हैं, और लोग झुंझुना बजा रहे हैं. And they're like, okay, is it a marriage? Like, let's go and experience a Peruvian rural wedding.
Barat.
And then I got Barat, and I got up, and then I tried to run, and I couldn't run because of course of the altitude. So I waited, and the whole band baja barat came to the church, and it was not a barat, it was actually a funeral. So there was a coffin, and people were carrying on their shoulders. And so for a lot of these cultures, the life of that person is actually celebration
they
of the life of that person. So you will have all these people, just like a Indian barat, they will be playing all different kind of music, and then you'll have the way there is janaza or antim yatra going on. Then this whole thing came to the church, and then they had their own whatever process that they do at the church, and then they took this person back to their cemetery.
I quite like this celebrating the life of the person wala practice. It's a nice practice. How beautiful, very nice. So this was like when you were still in this is part of your Sacred Valley
Yeah, so Sacred Valley is
area?
like a valley. There are multiple cities you can go. You
Mm.
will find different ruins of different size. You stay in one of these small villages. There is a stream going by, and then the hostel owner will tell you that if you hike that place, you'll find another Incan structure. So you climb, and it's just beautiful, cool
So you're just
air.
walking around this place, or you have to take a bus to take you from place A to place B here?
So you stay in a city, or you stay in a,
Mm.
so these are not cities, they are very, very small towns which
Mm.
have been
Mm.
there since, centuries. So when you are in these towns, you can just walk around because they're not very big. But then again,
Mm.
going from one town to another town, sometimes you take buses, sometimes you can take taxis. So you can spend around a week just in Sacred Valley, because there are different small villages that you can see. And again, you can spend as much time as you want in some of these places. So
Wow.
these are very nice, super pretty small villages built in the style of Spanish towns or villages, with a square and a park in center and a small church. And then there will be something of Incas nearby, because Incas ruled this, the whole
Mm.
place for
Mm.
centuries.
How long did you spend in this entire
I
area,
think we were
valley
there
area?
for 3-4 days. I think we spent a couple of days in Tambo, and then we made 2 day trips around just to visit different Inca structures and farmlands.
Beautiful. So you finished Sacred Valley, you have done the craziest, amazing Machu Picchu, and Pir.
So we get back to Cusco. We
Mm.
again spent a couple of days again because it's such a beautiful place.
Mm.
We get some massage sessions done.
Is it known for its?
So there, we when we were reading on internet, they had mentioned that because a lot of people come back from hikes, so they are really tired.
Mm.
So this has sprung up as a small scale industry
Oh,
in
nice.
that
Like, for
city.
example,
Yeah.
Turkish hammams are known. So I was asking
No, so
in that angle, aise
it's
kuch
not.
hai kya?
No, no, it's
Okay.
not that. It's just a place with a lot of people are tired, and they want
Yeah.
a massage
Mm.
done. So in that
बहुत
way, there
chale,
are
बहुत chale. You know, you have
uh,
earned a massage, Sharique.
yes. And then by then I was hooked to the coca leaves. So any chance that
Oh.
I would have of getting
मुझे ना बहुत
coca
हेडेक
leaves,
हो रहा है आज.
तो मेरे को थोड़ा सा coca leaves चाहिए. Yeah, but then
Freely
again we should
available,
not.
is it?
Yeah. So again, we should not look at it
I
the
know, I
way
know. Mm.
I'm being a little funny about it.
Frivolous,
But
yes.
it is really a herbal medication. It's like
Mm.
a cough syrup, for instance. People might use it to get drowsy, but the purpose is completely different and
Mm.
completely medicinal, and that's how it has been used for centuries there.
But you really get it everywhere, like very easily.
You will find at the airport. So some of these airports, because it's at that altitude, there will be a bora of coca leaves just lying outside. The way India में वो SIM card या कुछ शहरों countries में SIM card पड़ा रहता है ना, so you have those coca leaves just outside the airport. So it is a
Oh,
medicine, to be
it's a
honest.
medicine.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. So then you had spa, you had coca leaves.
So
Yeah.
it's a small old town. You just keep roaming around, and then there are restaurants, and we just were there trying coffees and everything. And then from Cusco we took a flight to La Paz, which is the capital of Bolivia. So Cusco was our last stop in Peru. A lot of people spent a lot more time in Peru because you can go hike the Andes. There are some other very, very pretty towns and natural things. But again, people travel for months and months in these places. We did not have that luxury, so we just took a flight to La Paz then.
You have these rainbow mountains also in Peru, right?
So again, we got lucky with Machu Picchu, but not with the Rainbow Mountains, because the day we were
Oh,
supposed to go, there was a huge, not a storm, but like crazy rains. So we
oh,
just couldn't make it to
oh, because I was
Rainbow
thinking, is it a
Mountain.
ticket फिर से है इसके लिए कि not
No, no,
really?
no. So
It's the
you
weather.
go there. So you take a bus to this place, and then you can either hike, and people actually do horse riding as well if you can't hike.
If you
So
can't hike.
that option is also available. And in pictures, it's perfect. And again, we were very, very disappointed that we couldn't make it, but there was no point, because it was raining through the day.
Yeah.
So we just stayed put in Cusco, and tried different cafes and
Yes. Yeah,
restaurants.
yeah. It's nice to have some chill time, man. Every day doesn't have to be
Yeah.
hikes and all of that. Plus, you got
Yeah.
lucky with Machu Picchu and the weather.
Yep.
So no
Yep. Yep.
complaints.
Yep. 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 Yep.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So then, like you said, now Fatak se La Paz. land हो गया तुम.
Yeah, we landed La Paz, and then we get out. And to put the context, it's called Tibet of Latin America because of the
Okay.
altitude. It is the most indigenous country of Latin America. When I say the most indigenous country, it means the percentage of population which is indigenous is the highest. They are much more local. They are much more proud of their own culture.
Oh,
While
nice.
they do not have a McDonald's in their country, and they are super proud about it.
क्या बात
Uh,
है.
yeah, so it's a different world altogether. So Peru might seem like very touristy because of course it has Machu Picchu, and then it has Cusco, it has Lima, and then sometimes what happens is that the person you met at Cusco in a hostel is also the person that you met in Aguascalientes hostel, because they're all following the same sort of the route, and then the whole train network is built around it. There are only tourists in that train, so there is no local. But the moment you land in Bolivia, it's like all that is gone. It's just so raw in terms of nature, in terms of the locals. And the airport of El Alto, which is the airport for La Paz, I think is the highest airport in the world, or the highest capital airport in the world, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Even
when we
La
land
Paz
there,
was supposed to be one of the highest
yeah,
admin
La Paz is the
capitals of the world or
is the high.
something.
So La Paz is the highest capital in the world, but it is in the base of a canyon. So there is a canyon, and La Paz is like on the base of the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you can't make a airport in the base of the canyon. So they had to build the airport on the top of the canyon. So you land on the
Oh.
top of the canyon, and then you take the cab down. So it's like reverse of going to a mountain. You stand on
All
the
the
airport, and
U-pin
then
bends will come as you're going down.
but
Mm.
you go down, and this airport is at a very high altitude. I landed, and Suhail was saying something to me, and I'm like, I can't talk and walk at the same time because of the altitude. We stand and we talk, and then when we walk because it's at such a high altitude. I was already getting out of breath. So
Oh.
yeah, it is
Wow. ऐसा feel आता है क्या? Because you're
yeah,
coming from
yeah.
Cusco. Cusco was decently high only, right?
But I think Cusco is 2,500 or something. This is, I think,
Hmm.
4,000 meters.
Oh.
And then you have such a big backpack, and it takes a while for you to get used to. And then
Oh.
again, you will find coca leaves.
Hmm.
वहाँ ऐसा बोरा में रखा रहेगा just to help you. And we got out, and
Very interesting, man. Hmm.
we took this cab down to the bottom of the canyon, and the same thing, the hostel guide told us, don't go there, don't go to this part of the city. But again, this is very pretty beautiful city at the bottom of the canyon. Some pretty colonial architecture, amazing great restaurants, a lot of places to go out and party. But then again, you can't hail a taxi on the road. You might not know what happens, so you have to only have Uber, for example.
Oh.
uh, yeah, so you can't like just stop a taxi and get on it, because that's not considered safe.
Public
Again, it is one of
transport?
there is, but there are certain areas that you can go during the day, but you can't go during the night. So public transport, of course, does not work at night. And that you mentioned public transport,
Okay.
La Paz are one of the most peculiar public transport in the world, since it's at the bottom of a rocky canyon. The time taken from just imagine from one end of the city to the others, and you have to go down all those hairpin bend, get to the bottom of the city, and then climb to the next end. So you can't do that. You can't build metro for the obvious reasons. There is a small railway line at the bottom of the canyon, but then city has expanded over years. मतलब ऐसा है कि वो कटोरे के ऊपर चढ़ता जा रहा है population, so
अच्छा अच्छा okay okay.
you have to connect all these people living in different parts of the city. So they have built trolleys or gondolas, you might want to call them. So they are like metros, but they go from one place to another place on top of the
Ropeway kinds.
ropeway
Hmm.
type.
Hmm.
And it is like metro in the sense that they have lines. So they'll have like ki acha yellow line to Rajiv Chowk se Noida jayega, and then blue line आपका द्वारका से गुड़गांव जाएगा, and then there are Rajiv Chowks of the world जहाँ पे 4 line intersect
चार
कर रहा
line
है.
मिलती है, I was going to ask.
हाँ. So you buy the ticket from one place to another place, you get on this ropeway, and you cross the entire city which is under you, and then you change the
Beautiful,
route.
man. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
ropeways anyway. जो that when bird's eye view मिलता है ना, it's
yeah.
lovely.
And then the things that you see, you'll not be able to see from ground, We
Correct.
saw all these very economically deprived kind of neighborhoods. What they have done is that उन्होंने अपने घर का छत मिला के एक बड़ा सा ग्राउंड बना दिया है, and उस पे वो लोग फुटबॉल खेल रहे हैं.
Or like on top,
So
on the terrace kinds.
हाँ, बट वो टेरेस एक आदमी का नहीं है, ऐसे 50 घर मिला के
Oh
एक टेरेस बना दिया है,
my.
and then they are playing football, and it is very caged, and they're playing football on top of it. And again, very funny thing, Argentina, the football team, the great Argentina football team, they had gone to Bolivia to play. Messi was part of the team, and they lost 6-1.
Oh.
The reason is that they couldn't manage the altitude. They just couldn't
Ah.
breathe. So Bolivia
Oh.
is one of the most difficult places to go and play football.
And यहाँ पे छत पे लोग एकदम
हाँ,
amazingly खेल
खेल
रहे
रहे
हैं.
yeah,
No, this is
yeah,
so interesting, and that too they must be down in the valley. So airport wala you're
yeah,
saying is
yeah,
like so much higher. So it must have been quite a thing for you guys to get acclimatized, man. Did it take a while?
yeah. It took us a day. Again, as you mentioned, being in Cusco really helped us. And then again, altitude sickness it either happens or it does not happen.
That is true. That is true.
We were not troubled, to be honest, but we didn't want to take a chance because it was
Correct.
a very long trip.
Correct.
So yeah,
Very
and then
nice.
we spent 3-4 days in La Paz. Not the kind of city that anyone wants to go, in the sense that it is not, the Paris of the world or Buenos Aires of the world. But we had a gala time, and we saw some of the most bizarre things that I have ever seen in my life.
Like,
So there is a witch market. You can go and do kala jadoo.
क्या होता है witch
And
market में? So I have also theoretically read about this witch market. What is this witch market? Who are these
so
witches?
so it is an intersection between astrology and I don't. So again, when I say astrology, it is not astrology per se, but something similar to that. Between that and black magic and a little bit of herbal medicine and a little bit of some things, a lot of indigenous practices which now might not be considered, or they are looked
Scientific.
down upon by the
Hmm.
scientific. So for example, when person from Bolivia is constructing a house, they bury a llama beneath the foundation of their house. So you will find llama fetus just hanging from every shop. So I don't want to use Bolivia because Bolivia is a modern political entity. But if you are indigenous from that region, or the practice is that if you're building a house, you need to sacrifice a llama. So if you are a rich person, you can afford to buy a llama, sacrifice it, and bury under the foundation of your house. But if you're a poor person, you make do with fetuses of the llama who had died during childbirth or during pregnancy. Or and then you have snake skins lying there, and then you have a lot of these herbal medication. For there are aphrodisiacs, and there are a lot of different things just hanging there, and it's just completely bizarre. Just imagine snake skin and coca leaves, and you have all these herbs, and then you have fetuses of llama hanging, and there are different kind of witches. So you call them witches, but they are essentially women who say that जैसा हमारे यहाँ होता है ना कि बंगाली बाबा के यहाँ आप आओ, and then सौतन से छुटकारा पाओ, या अमेरिका
Altu
का वीजा
jalaltu,
पाओ.
ay balako
आलतू
taltu.
yeah. So it is intersection between black magic and a lot of astrology and medicinal herb and non-scientific spiritual things beneath the foundation of
Wow, I
your
have like
house.
5,000 thoughts in my head, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll ask very silly questions. Okay, is this market like an open market, or is it a witch
No.
market? For example, you have an area where we go and buy slippers, or an area where we go and buy fruits. So is this an area where there's a witch market?
Yeah, so it is in the center of the city, as
Okay.
you mentioned. एक ऐसे sabzi mandi हो गया. Then there is a big market area where you can buy and woolens, for instance. So we went and we did buy some sweaters. If you have come across those in the photographs, really bright colored.
I love it.
Yeah. The
Alpaca wool or something, right?
alpaca wool. So that is
Mm.
very popular in Andean region. But just beyond those markets, again, magical realism. You are buying sweater in one shop, and then you cross the street, and then you find these llama fetuses hanging from 20 outlets, which is like it's an open market. It's
It's an
just
open
like an
market.
open thing. It's not that someone is hiding. They are
It's not
not.
hush hush or something.
It's not a hush hush. It's not a taboo. It's just part of life, to be honest. So
Do the witches look different? When I'm saying different is, for example, Indian movies. Of course, all this nonsense ideas that we get are from movies. They'll have 5 inches of kajal under their eye. They'll have a big bindi. They all look like furious, always angry. Who are witches? Are they regular people?
So they're of course not regular people, but they are not, again, as they're not carrying, like, a garland of a skull in their around their necks.
Very good example you gave.
But again, you have to understand that as it is not hush hush, so you don't have to pretend that you are different. It is like going to a hakim, for instance. You just go and you talk about your problems, and then they will try to resolve it. And as I mentioned, it is also medicinal. You can go to
Yes.
these people for if you have a fever, or if you are there are certain aphrodisiac that these people prescribe if you need those things.
Oh, this is so interesting.
And I think there is a huge cultural war going on, because again, there are Westerners who don't just look down upon it, and the indigenous people, they are very proud of their traditions. Again, Bolivia has been one of those places where there have been a lot of coups and counter coups. Che Guevara was actually killed in India.
Yes. We have
He
to
was
talk about motorcycle diaries and
yeah.
Che, man. Yeah.
So he was assassinated by an America-backed military government. So when we went there, it was ruled by an indigenous person called Evo Morales. Bolivia. He was the first indigenous president of Bolivia, and
First.
yes, in hundreds of years of
Can you
its
imagine?
history.
Yeah.
And he was trying to tell the indigenous people, it's nice, it's okay to speak your language, it's okay to follow your culture. So there was a lot of political to and fro going on, and I really love that they are just trying to, the tribal people in India, we just don't get to see them, we don't get to see their culture.
We
But
don't.
this person there is trying to help. But it's, again, life is not that simple.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church didn't like him, the Europeans didn't like him, and then there was a coup, and then he was deposed off, and he went to Mexico, and there was a huge, and then there was a white European descent person who took over the government. And I think something keeps going on there all the time.
Money,
So it's a
power,
big
all
political
that.
war going on. But yeah. But people have become much more proud of their identity. And one of those identity I would really want to talk about is the Cholita. So these are local indigenous women who dress up in a very peculiar way. They have a big, bright blouse and jacket, and they have these fedora hats, multicolored skirts. These are indigenous women. They come from one of the two cultures. One is called Aymara, and the other is called Quechua. So I think there are 36 indigenous communities in Bolivia. So the women belonging to these two cultures are called Cholita, but their dress has been influenced by the Spanish colonization time. So it's a mixture between very, very bright skirts and blazers and fedora hat. And Cholita was a slightly derogatory term, but we are not shying away from it. So they are just trying to, make it even more prominent, this identity. So you will see a small kiosk restaurant being run by these women who are in this very, very peculiar dress, which is a cross between indigenous dresses and European dressing. And at some point in time, these Cholitas got into wrestling. Now, this is again one of the most bizarre things that you will find in Bolivia. There are neighborhoods where wrestling, the old WWE style wrestling takes place, and the locals go there, they buy tickets, and it's like a picnic sort of a environment. So there is a ring, just like WWE. There are seating all around it. Of course, it's not as fancy as the usual WWE because it's a much more local affair.
Okay.
It's a very patriarchal kind of society. So somehow, and I'm not sure what was the connect, they just wanted to show their strength and stuff. So they got into wrestling, and it became a huge thing. Then people like me ended up going there. The hostel walas started telling us, you should definitely go there. It is again one of the most bizarre things that you will see. So there are buses, you buy the tickets, the buses will pick you up from the hostel. They will take you to these huge industrial kind of a complex, like huge roofs, big buildings. There is nothing inside, just a ring inside. And there are locals. Wahan pe aise mela jaisa mahal hai. People are buying chips, and they're buying coke and everything. And then they are making bets for different women and different
You have
wrestlers.
bets and all that
And
also.
Yeah. And there is a small section where you have people like me, who are all the travelers who are just sitting there. And again, it's completely bizarre. These women are in their cholita dress, so they have a
Mm.
full-fledged knee-length skirts. They have these very very bright blazers, and they still have the hats on. And you have all these characters just like WWE. There are men and there are women, and then there is a, I don't know, 200 kg man who is like the big show of this, the entire evening, and he is throwing men around whosoever is coming in the ring. And then you have this one woman comes in who grabs this man, she holds him over his head and
What?
throws him into the audience. And there are
Oh
complete
my
crazy
God,
stuff.
what a
Yeah.
crazy.
So WWE, just imagine WWE, but some of these characters are indigenous Quechua women who are trying to, escape domestic violence. They are just trying to assert their identity, and they are still dressed up. They still have their hats on, the hats that I talked about, and the
Yes.
show goes on. And for us, while it's a spectacle, for the locals, it's a sort of a theater, nukkad natak. It's a weekly affair. They buy tickets very cheap. We buy the expensive tourist one.
Hmm.
For them, it is the usual one. They're sitting with their coke, and they're sitting with their peanuts and mumpali and stuff, and they're enjoying the
And they're
show. And the
cheering
show
and
goes on.
everything.
They're cheering, and
Yeah,
then these women are
Mahal.
fighting. The mahal, but it's just like WWE. Mein you put a tribal woman who's dressed up
Correct.
in a tribal, clothes, and then she is picking up these men and throwing like balloons. Yeah.
Solid, man. What an experience. This is
Yeah,
crazy. Would this Cholita wrestling experience be mentioned as one of the things that people should do when they go to like
definitely. I
Bolivia or
think
La Paz?
definitely. Yeah. Because again, it's an intersection. It's just like WWE.
Hmm.
Everyone knows that it is sort of fake, but it is the cultural context of this one is very very different to any other wrestling, to be honest. And the way audiences get involved in it, it's just unparalleled.
This is crazy. Did you know about this before you went there?
No.
No.
We went there and we asked around the things to do. So
Too
it's called
good.
Cholita wrestling, and then I'm talking about a time which was what 7, 8 years ago. So it has, it has been getting popular. Yeah,
Oh my God. This is crazy. Wow. So this
yeah,
was the 3, 4 days you were in La Paz?
yeah. We were there for 3, 4 days in La Paz. So again, there are walking tours. It's not a city with highlight that you can't go and
Hmm.
see an Eiffel Tower, for instance, but it's a great city in terms of just absorbing the vibes.
Hmm.
It's much more raw compared to Lima, because in Lima you have a lot of tourists. And Bolivia, again, as I mentioned, the indigenous population is much higher.
Yeah.
The people are just much more warmer. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's nice.
and it's just super nice. Again, it's slightly unsafe at night. It get much more unsafe, so you have to always be aware of that. There are different markets that take place at different time of the week. So there is a Monday Mangal Bazaar and Budh Bazaar and all that. So you go and explore that, and then of course you can spend half a day in which market. There are some very very beautiful churches. You should go and explore those. Again,
Food?
Bolivia is one of yes, again, Bolivia is one of the cheapest countries to travel in that part of the region.
Nice.
Food, again, very similar to Peru, but still different. Very heavy on meat. They have a dumpling called salteñas. It is very juicy. So
Okay.
it is meat dumpling, but it is very juicy. And they say that if you are able to eat it without dripping it out of your mouth, you are a great kisser.
Can I ask you, तुम्हारा क्या, what was the
Of course,
outcome? No.
it did not drip, but I would not answer it any other way. Yeah.
Oh, is it similar look? Does it look similar to momos? That's the
Uh,
only dumpling that we know of.
Not very similar, but yeah, like in look and feel, it is a dumpling, but much more juicy from inside.
Which meat is it?
It's beef. It's beef.
It's beef.
Yeah,
Nice. Very
yeah,
interesting, man.
yeah.
But these
And then
places,
there are
will they have anything vegetarian?
you will because this part of the world is very big on beans, rajmas.
Okay.
So they will have something on
Something.
beans. They will. So you will not struggle for vegetarian food. You might
Very
not
good.
be able to try 80% of the food, but like
Hmm.
traveling to, for example, China. If you go to rural China, you'll really struggle to find something vegetarian. But
Yes.
here you will not be able to try the delicacies, but you will survive
Which is okay. Which is
very well.
okay.
Yeah, which is
Very
okay.
nice. Very good. All right. So that was is that La Paz?
Yeah, that was it for La Paz. Then we head to the place where the reason we came to Bolivia was the salt flats of Uyuni. Salar means salt flats, and Uyuni, it's a name of a city. So
Okay.
the salt flats of Uyuni, it is world's largest salt flats. People talk about Kutch. While it is incredible, but Salar de Uyuni is just out of this world. So you take a flight to Uyuni,
Okay.
you get there, you have to take a tour because hundreds of miles of salt flats, so there is
Mm.
no way that you can get there. So you have to take a tour. There are, I think, three kind of tours available. One is one day, you just go see the salt flats, come back. The other one is 3 days, which we took. So you see the salt flats and you see a little bit more, which we'll talk about. And the third one is that you do 3 days and they drop you to the other side of border to Chile. So this part
Oh,
of Bolivia borders Chile. So a lot of these people do, a month-long trip across Latin America. So they are in Bolivia and then they just step over to Chile. So we landed at airport. We were picked up by the group tour guys. They take us to their office in Uyuni. Now imagine Uyuni if you have seen one of those Western movies. The Wild Wild West kind of movies.
wee, wee,
Uh,
wee, wee,
yes,
wee,
there is
wee.
no more city which is more wild west than that city. Again,
Oh man,
it was a frontier city. There was a lot of mining going on at that point in time, so they just built the city and then the mining stopped. So it
silver
is a,
mining.
yeah,
Oh,
silver
okay.
mining, and I think now there is lithium mining as well. There has been copper mining in between as well.
Oh,
uh, but here it was a mining town. They had just built it, and then the price crashed. The mining became, unsustainable, so the city is just a remnant of a frontier town. uh,
oh.
Now the only purpose is to serve the tourists for going to Salar de Uyuni. And when we got to the office, we met a lot of, again, crazy travelers, as you mentioned, that okay, what do you do? Oh, I'm a bartender in some place. Okay, what do you do? I had a normal job, but for last 6 months I'm a tour operator or a tour guide in Amazon. And then there were some normal people. When I say normal, they were engineers in Italy, husband and wife. And then we met some people of Indian descent who were living in the UK.
Hmm.
So they had come on their backpack year through Latin America.
Nice.
So they recommended us some songs, Punjabi songs, British Punjabi songs. uh, but
तो सुनते
yeah,
सुनते
so
तुम
they,
लोग सलार दी यूनी एक्सप्लोर
yeah,
किए क्या? Oh
so we
God.
were 8 people. We got placed in two different big SUVs, and we started our journey. So we had landed at 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning. We start our journey. We are just getting to know these people. Our first stop is the graveyard of trains.
What is
Now
this?
this was a mining town, as I mentioned.
Mhm.
You had to take all these ore or raw material from the mines and take them to the place where they can be separated from the ore, whichever you are pulling out from the mines.
Hmm.
And the government at the time built railway tracks between these two places, and the trains were plying between them, taking raw material and, of course, the people from one place to another place. But the mining industry collapsed, and they just left the trains there.
Oh,
Now, because of the salt flats or the salt lying there, the air is very salty and the ocean is not very far. What does it mean? It means rust.
rust
So
everywhere.
all these trains are rusting there, lying there. So you have, again, the most surreal scene you will ever see in your life. Multiple railway tracks, and then you have engines all rusting at different stage of rust. Some of them have rusted 70%, some of them have rusted 20%, some of them have rusted 10%. And these were normal trains some years ago or some decades ago,
Good
and they are
strains
just
kinds.
goods train. And then there were some normal coaches as well, because they would be plying passengers as well, but mostly goods trains. And graveyard of train, like as literal as it could get. There are trains
This is nuts.
lying there dying, or they are dead trains now decaying.
Decaying,
So I
yeah.
think, so graveyard of trains, and that
So
was the
when did
first
this
stop.
salt mine close? How many years? Like this, these trains have stopped
I think
operating since
it's been a few decades.
few decades.
I'm not,
Okay.
yeah, few decades. It's not a recent phenomena. No, it happened in
Hmm.
20th century. Because trains in themselves are not such an old
Exactly,
thing.
exactly, exactly. This is fascinating. Oh my God. And they've made it a tourist destination also, which is even cooler.
Yeah, because once you get to uni, you have to cross that place, and then in itself, I mean, you might just go for that. I don't know if there is any other graveyard of the trains. The way there is no witch market anywhere else in the world, there is no graveyard of trains.
Oh,
Uh,
बढ़िया है यार. Lovely.
and
Okay,
there
okay.
are small, villages around it, and the
Hmm.
people are going on with their lives. You can go buy a coke there or a coffee, those sort of stuff, and then you get on to back to your SUVs, and then you drive into Salar, the Uyuni. I'm not sure if it is correct or not. They say the way they say about Great Wall of China, you can see this salt flats from space. It's so huge. Now it's just, again, I'm using the word surreal so many
Hmm.
times in this
And
session
it's
itself, but
totally justified.
just imagine you are standing there, and it's white and white and white and white till the horizon. There are no mountains, there are no houses. It's like you are in middle of an ocean where the ocean is of salt, and there are no waves, and you see the sky coming down to the salt flats.
Just dry white
Yeah,
ground.
yeah, yeah. So in the rainy season, water comes and it becomes
Hmm.
like a mirror. You might have seen some of those photographs.
Yes.
So people go there for their pre-wedding shoot and all that stuff, because it's like standing on top of a mirror. But then again, that is not the safest. You will not venture too deep into the salt flat. So we did not decide to go for that region, that time of the year. But even now, like just salt flats. Like again, the only analogy I could see, it's like an ocean of salt without the waves, and you see the sky and the salt flats.
Oh my God. So I have been to Run of Kutch.
Okay.
And I have seen pictures of it. So it's white, but
Yeah.
it's not white. So it's white.
It is white.
It is
It
little
is white.
brown, but it's gorgeous. Okay, Run of Kutch is just something else, but it's not that pure white. But I've seen pictures of this Salar, the Uyuni. It is as white can get.
Yeah. And the
Oh
like you can drive miles and miles on it, and it will be the same view. It will be the same
my
view, and it's
God.
like flat. There is no bump even of an inch or anything, because when it rains, the salt becomes evenly spread, and then the water evaporates, and it just leaves salt flat as flat as it
Gorgeous.
gets.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. So what do? You get off and you go for a short walk here?
You go for a short walk, you take those perspective kind of picture where your friend is standing far behind you, you raise your feet, and the image comes like you're crushing on your
Yes, 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 yes.
friend. We had carried small dinosaurs, so we
Hmm.
kept dinosaur near, and I went far away, so I'm fighting with the dinosaur, those sort of images. So on day one, that is it, but there is a spot where you have cactus. Now these cactus are thousands of years old, and they are twice as tall as I am.
What?
Yes.
I mean, I have seen pictures of cactus. It's this tall, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is
So just
in the middle of the salt flats.
in between,
Hmm.
there is a thoda sa aise patthar or thoda sa
Hmm.
green as it gets in the desert.
Hmm.
So wahan pe there is a cactus, which is, there are multiple cacti, of course, so, and they are taller than me. Yeah. So I have images where I'm like looking at the cactus, and the cactus is this tall, and it is looking down on me,
Sharique, I'm
and
very jealous, man. You're really very jealous. Oh man,
they
this
have
is
been here
crazy.
for hundreds of years. This cactus has seen, a gazillion sharks, not gazillion, maybe hundreds of thousands of sharks
It might
coming
have
there,
seen your
getting their food.
dinosaurs also.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Oh my God, this is crazy. And where do you stay? So you said that you've taken the 3 day or what were 2 day, 3 day tour, you said?
We did a 3-day tour.
So where do you stay?
Just you stay in these very, very temporary structures. Like they're not temporary in the sense like a camp, but they are walls and then roof, sometimes of wood, sometimes of tin, and it gets really cold at night because you are at a very high altitude. And deserts usually get very, very cold at night, but this
Yes.
is also at an altitude, so you are freezing. But then these guys ask you to come out for a night thing they want us to do. So then again they put us in in those SUVs and drive us to middle of the salt flats, and we are in middle of the Milky Way.
Ah,
I have never seen Milky Way like that, because there is no light. You are at, I think, I don't know, 3,500 altitude and salt flats. And then this guy brings a torch, and he's just pointing to the different stars that are
yes,
there, and the
constellations and all that.
constellations that are there. And it's so bright. I have never thought that Milky Way could be so bright. It was like someone has actually spilled milk on the floor, the way Milky Way was named. There
Yes.
it is just you and then Milky Way. And it is
Wow,
just surreal.
spectacular.
And I've heard people, experiencing Milky Way in when they go to these mountains, even in Himalayas and everything. And I'm sure it looks very, very pretty. But again, this was because we were in salt flats. So in Himalayas, you have like mountains all around you, and you could see maybe 70% of the sky. But here, just imagine flat Earth, and the Milky Way goes down till the horizon. So you Milky Way starts from the horizon and it goes to the horizon on the other end, and then it goes on the right, it goes on the left. So I'm sure Run of Kutch would probably have that as well, but I have not been there. But this was again a very humbling experience. And then they were of course talking about how these stars are so many light years ago, this particular constellation is this many light years ago. And we were shivering, it was below freezing.
मैं तो
So
सेंटी हो
yeah,
जाती हूँ ऐसे experiences में यार.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really moves you. It really does.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
were, I have been to Jordan. I went there about 7-8 years back, and we went camping in this place called Wadi Rum, which
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
this almost
I've been there.
Martian. Yeah, it's almost a Martian kind of place. Our stays were in camps, but our camp guys said, if you guys want, you guys can sleep in. They have like a stage area where they do a bonfire and all
And
that. You can sleep over there. You might have scorpions, but don't worry about it. तो the पास में नहीं आएंगे क्योंकि there is an आग. We like okay. So we were 3 friends, and we we took our mattresses and all that from the camp, and from the tent, and we brought it to this place, and we slept overnight on that open area. And we kept an alarm on our phone for every 1 hour, because they said you can most
yeah,
likely you'll be able to see the Milky Way. And we saw, just like how you're describing, we actually saw it rise from the horizon. So every 1 hour, because then we would doze off. So then we'll have the alarm. So we'll wake up, oh, see ki wahan pe hai, oh, 70 degrees mein hai, oh, 80 degrees mein, oh, 90 degrees mein hai. And we could see the whole thing move, and it was just spectacular. But like what you're saying, even Wadi Rum has, these mountains around, right? So it would not be the kind of view that you are saying, because you are on an absolutely flat land with no obstruction at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
So beautiful, man. So how many hours can you actually go and stand in that freezing temperature and observe the
No, so
Milky
they
Way?
they spent half an hour, 45 minutes, because again you have to get back, do your dinner, and then again
Yeah.
tomorrow is a long day. This was again just the first day.
Hmm.
I think we woke up at 4:30 or 5 to take the flight from La Paz to Uyuni, and we have already done hundreds of kilometers. Uh,
Hmm.
and again, the people there, anyone who makes it to Uyuni are not like normal people. They have to have a streak of craziness. So you meet them, and it's just amazing what all they have done in their lives and what all they want to do in their lives. There were a bunch of people who were there for 6 months backpacking trip. There was this guy who was adopted by a German couple when he was a kid, maybe 30-35 years ago, and he had lived all his life in Germany. He married a German girl, and then he was in Bolivia for the first time, and he was looking out for his parents or biological siblings and stuff. But he also wanted to take the opportunity to see the entire country. He doesn't speak Spanish, he doesn't speak the local language, but he's there in the land that he was born in, and then
Wow.
he has his German wife.
Beautiful, beautiful. My God. What conversations, man. Many of these
Yeah,
places
yeah.
get extra special because of the conversations that you have with these strangers, no? Very beautiful. So this place, so you said it's not tents, but it's kind of temporary accommodations,
Yeah,
warm
but like,
enough.
yeah. No, so you have to have like layers of clothes. We knew that we are gonna struggle, so we had bought some of the warmest socks and gloves and jackets, and then they provide some quilt and blankets. But it's kind of cold night. You just don't get the warmth. You just want to
Hmm.
get through the night, and then start your next day. So next now we go in the direction, we leave salt flats behind. We climb further higher in the Andes, and things, can you imagine, get even more bizarre, for lack of better words. So now there are pink lakes and green lakes and black lakes on top of the mountains,
I have read
because these
about these things. Ki alag
yeah,
alag color lake. Even Peru has these pink lakes and all of that. Even
yeah,
Bolivia has. Wow.
yeah. So you get higher, and some of them have pink colored algae, some of them have green chemical Now, because you're climbing higher and this is a very heavy volcanic activity area, so you have a lot of salt coming from underneath the ground, or a lot of chemicals coming from underneath the ground. So they take on different colors, and you have these pink flamingos just roaming around the pink lake. So again, completely surreal. You are in the middle of a high altitude desert. There are mountains all around you, but there is a lake which is pink, like as pink as it gets.
Is it really
You know,
pink?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, have you had noon chai, like the Kashmiri noon chai?
Nahi, nahi, nahi.
No, so it's like pink, completely pink, and the flamingos are pink, and they're just roaming around. And then you just sit. There is no phone network. You're just sitting there around, freezing, but around these pink lakes
This
and
is
black lakes and
crazy.
green lakes. And then you have like really
Oh,
crazy rock formation, because there was a rock, and then the air has been cutting down the bottom of the rock, because the heavier air is near the bottom. So it looks like a lattu.
okay.
So it's like very narrow at the bottom, then it grows, and it's
Mushroom
very heavy
kinds
on the top.
almost.
Yeah, and one day it will, like from hundreds of years or maybe some decades from now, it will, maybe hundreds of years, just fall over when the bottom is also gone. But yeah, it just gets crazy. You see certain volcanoes, and since the altitude is higher, your heart is beating much faster. So I
Hmm.
could see on my Apple Watch that my heart is like 80, 90. So my resting heartbeat is like 55, 60. But because my heart has to work a little bit harder, it
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
all,
yeah.
and now I'm not even walking. I'm just on that vehicle, and then I have to keep chewing coca leaves just to make sure I'm doing well. And then he stops at a place where there is a volcanic activity, but it is not like an open volcano. It is just,
Hmm.
there are a bunch of rocks, and there is a smoke coming out from underneath, and you can actually go and walk those rocks.
You
So
can?
you have, yes, you can. So you are on one of these rocks, and there is fumes of
Around you?
volcanic activity around you.
Oh, this is gorgeous. Unbelievable. Oh, what an experience. You can never have a second ever. You can
Yeah,
see
yeah,
clear
yeah,
blue glacial lakes and all that, but pink, black, and green to chance hi nahi hai.
yeah.
And that with
And then
flamingos around.
a lot of volcanic things around. Some of them you can walk up to, some of them you can't walk up to. And the landscape in itself, just imagine, it's not a normal landscape around.
Did you bring any
It's
of the
just,
volcanic rocks back with you as
yeah, yeah,
mementos?
yeah, 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 we did.
That's a better memento than going and buying something from the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a magical trip this is, yaar. Listeners, don't worry. We'll put up all these mega wow photos and all of it on our Instagram page and our blog. Misadventures of a sneaker.substack.com is the blog, and Instagram page is just Misadventures of a Sneaker. Head over there and see all of it. I'm really loving this. Bolo bolo.
Yeah, so the first day was salt flat and this
Hmm.
cacti thing. The second day is this. And while these are stops, again, the way itself is just crazy. So you have Andes towering all around you, and then
Snow capped?
the road, snow capped, yes. And it's like a high altitude desert. Sometimes the landscape would be very red. Sometimes it will be extremely black. Sometimes it will be extremely muddy. And then
Oh,
you just, there are different kind of landscapes. It's just like something that you would never have seen ever in your life. So you have been to Wadi Rum. It is again very unique, very different, but
yeah.
you have some semblance of comparison. Okay, it
Yes.
is desert with a little bit of mountains, but this is something that I have never seen something before that or after that. And then they will go and you'll just sit by the pink lake, and then they'll stop somewhere. You will have your lunch, and then you're just talking to different people, and it's not crowded. The
Hmm.
best part, it's not crowded, because there are not a lot of jeeps or the SUVs going, but even if they're going, the lakes is huge. So
Hmm.
they stop at one end, you stop at other end. So by now these 8 people have become your friends, so you're just there with your friends enjoying the view.
Extremely perfect. My God, this is like, I don't know, I cannot even like put into words. It's that amazing. Oh, and having such conversations that oh, you have a lunch box, सामने pink lake hai, sitting and yapping. It's
Yeah,
oh my God. And मौसम अच्छा है.
बहुत ठंडा है.
Hmm.
But you might get sunburn
Sunburnt.
because
Because you're at altitude, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you're in altitude. Yeah. What shoes do you wear when you go for such places?
I had my hiking shoes while we did not do a lot of hiking, but again, it's desertish, it's
Hmm.
mountainous, it's salt flat. So I had my hiking shoes on. That's recommended. But some of them had sneakers as well.
Hmm.
Uh, But there are some people who spent a lot more days than just 3 days, just exploring it in a different way, hiking from one lake to another lake as part of tours, and some of them, as I mentioned, just they cross over the border to the
Yeah.
other side to Chile, and then you have Atacama Desert and all those places. So they do the
Oh
whole
man, you're like talking about my
thing. Yeah,
geography book, man. I'm thinking getting back to
yeah,
Atacama. कितने सालों बाद सुन रही हो?
yeah. So one of the crazy thing is that like the way India and Pakistan are, so the
Hmm.
same kind of relationship Bolivia and Chile has. So
Oh.
Bolivia is a landlocked country now, but at
Hmm.
one point in time it was not. They had access to the Pacific Ocean, but Chile invaded and overtook their passage to the Pacific Ocean. So now Bolivia is a landlocked country, and this is where the part that you cross over to Chile from Bolivia was actually part of Bolivia before. So you meet any Bolivian, they would invariably talk about how much they hate Chile.
Oh, wow. So when you're on this
Yeah,
tour of the lake and Salar, is the Valley of the Moon wala area and all, is that in the same
yeah,
ilaka?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you cover that. So but again it just merges into one another, so
Hmm.
you give yourself to them for 3 days, because and it is very important to look at the ratings, because it could be slightly dangerous, because there have been instances of these SUVs flipping over. It is a mountainous rasta, ubad khabad type ka rasta, so we took the most expensive one. While the gap is not a lot, you might end up saving $100, $150 between the most expensive and the cheapest one. And then it is up to them wherever they take you, because you trust them for your safety, so you also trust them that they will make sure that you cover most of the
Correct.
areas that are there. Yeah,
Wow. I've
yeah,
read about this Valley of the Moon and the urban legend that surrounds it. They actually
yeah.
say that or rather, they believe that it was called the Valley of the Moon by Neil Armstrong because he actually came here, saw it, and said, "Arey, ye to same to same hai."
Ah,
It actually apparently resembles how the
moon is
Pachamama of Moon is and the
moon.
Pachamama of
And I
of
think that
this
the
area
landscape
is.
here is very, very. Again, we tend to underestimate Mars, and we any surreal landscape we tend to call it Martian. But this
Correct.
really was really, really uh, bizarre, surreal, magical, unreal, whatever you want to call it. During the day, during night, it was just very, very unique.
And then for the second day at night, you camp somewhere else or you come back to the
Yeah,
same
you camp.
place.
No, you camp somewhere else. So it's like a circular thing. Third day, you
Okay.
hardly do anything. You just
Hmm.
look out the window, you stop, have lunches and everything. Because again, it's just going through a very, very bizarre, surreal landscape. So even if there is no cacti, even if there is no volcano, just the view outside the window is amazing. And it takes a toll because you have been on this altitude for a while. You are crammed inside the SUV. The temperature is very, very cold. Your heart has been beating furiously for
Correct.
a couple of days by now. So yeah, it is physically very, very taxing, but again, you just keep looking out the window, you stop, you take pictures, and then it is just like a small community of 8 people,
Yes.
for 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a little personal question, personal as in personal for me. I have a lot of road sickness, man. So these kind of places would it be okay for me?
No, it's not like hairpin bends. It
Hmm.
is thoda sa kharab rasta. It's like going through a very, very rural wala rasta, because
Rasta. Okay.
these tours have been going on for years and years and years now. So there is no road, but there is a unpaved road, you can say. Of course, kahin pe tedha meda hota hai.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It gets slightly tilted as well, and that is why it is important to choose the safest or the
Hmm.
option with
Hmm.
the most best reviews.
Best.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Nice. Beautiful. So then,
yeah.
बाप रे, तुम कैसे कैसे जगह गए हो यार, कैसे कैसे जगह गए हो सही में हो. Oh, I'm so glad we chose Peru and Bolivia, man, because I mean, though Antarctica will have stories, but not like this. This is like crazy unique.
Yeah, yeah,
Every
yeah,
place
yeah.
is a different landscape altogether. Like you have spoken about so many, you've spoken about ruins. I mean, so far, and we are maybe like
Yeah.
3/4 through the conversation, you've spoken about ruins, somewhere about the view of the Pacific. Yeah. And, walking around that Sacred Valley
Yeah.
kind of different terrains. Then coming here, you're in La Paz, जो airport कहीं और है, तुम लोग कहीं और हो kinds.
Uh,
Then now the Salar, the Uyuni, pink lakes, black lakes, moon kind of surfaces.
It's just, I think
And
it's just
the Milky Way. Oh my God. Can you see the kind of unique natural experiences you've had? These are not like man. I'm not even counting Machu Picchu. So I'm only talking about natural kind of experiences. It's nuts.
so again, it's just the feeling that you have a lot of people get moved to tears. More than
Yes.
anything, it's just so humbling. uh,
Yes. You feel
the
insignificant.
you feel insignificant looking at the Milky Way, looking at these salt flats, and then you get to realize there is so much in this on our planet itself, which is
Yeah.
unlike our planet, that you go and explore, and then you meet people who have been to even more crazier places, and you just like when you travel, like when I'm traveling to these places, there are you have traveled X amount of places, and then there are travelers who have traveled much lesser than you have. But then you also meet travelers who have been to a lot more places, and then you get to hear those stories, and you
Yes.
know you will never get to those places for different reasons. Of course, I'll probably never be able to climb the highest Andes or Andean mountain, and then you meet someone who has been there, and then they're talking about the stories or the experience they had there. Is just
Brilliant. Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I love such conversations. This is really
Yeah.
nice. And me being the chatty one, मैं सबसे बात करती हूँ, कहीं जाती हूँ. So then you finish your 3-day tour, and then where do you get back? Like,
So we
where's your
get back
base
to
camp for
Uyuni.
this? You get
We
back
get
there.
back to
Okay.
Uyuni. Yeah.
Hmm.
So the third day is just a half day.
Hmm.
Around noon, we start our journey back. By the evening, we get back to Uyuni. We grab something to eat. Very simple. I think we ordered. By then, we just wanted, a lot of carbs. So I think we ordered like some pizza, which was not like pizza, but like it was pizza. So we had pizza, and then we took a bus to a city called Potosi.
Okay.
Uh, Now,
Hmm.
Potosi is called the most tragic city in the world.
Yeah,
Uh,
why?
at one point in time, it was one of the richest cities in the world. There were huge silver mines all
Hmm.
around it, where silver was getting shipped to Spain, because again it was a Spanish colony. So a city, got built around it. You have all these people who had come from Spain and their descendants who became millionaire of their time just by owning these silver mines. And when you walk through these streets, you see these beautiful houses and beautiful doors, and the carvings and the windows, and it was the richest city in the world. And I think there is a history that the dollar symbol actually comes from the city of Potosi. I think that symbol
Oh.
of dollar comes from the city of Potosi. So it was the mint capital of the world, in the sense all the money in the world at that point in time was coming from Potosi. And it is a city which is very hilly, again at a very high altitude. It is not easy to walk around. Now the tragedy of the city is twofold. There was a tragedy that was going on at that point in time itself, when it was at its peak, because the people who were mining were the slaves of Africa, who had been imported from
Oh.
Africa, and a lot of indigenous people, and they were losing their lives by dozens every day. But these colonizers didn't care about it, so these people were dying in those mines, but the silver kept coming out. The city kept uh, getting richer and richer and richer. And then you had operas, and you have theaters, and you have houses with the most amazing china crockery and the silks from, I don't know,
Oh, very
India.
lavish.
And then you had wooden architecture coming from Egypt, and all those places, stuff coming from Indonesia. And then the silver went out. The
Oh, they
mines,
ran out of silver. The mines kind of
they
ran out of
ran
silver.
they ran out of silver. So all those people who lost their lives, mining out, making these people rich, but then they ran out of silver, and the city fell upon very hard times, because there's nothing to keep the city going. But then they found copper. Now they started extracting copper. The city had a little bit of revival, but then they also ran out of copper, and the price of copper collapsed. So now you have this royal amazing city which has decayed into a very very poor city. You could see the crumbling walls, and you can see that it was rich at one point in time, and it's not rich anymore. Now these hills around the city, they are like a molehill, like an ant hill. Like you have plugged out the silver and copper out of it, so it can collapse at any point in time. So government has banned mining there. but there is no employment in the city. So some of the people in the city, they have made a cooperation sort of thing, and they continue to mine there. Whatever little copper they can find, just to keep their livelihood. And you can actually visit these mines. So Suhail and I decided to visit those mines, and again we opted for a reputed tour operator. When we went there, it was just two of us,
Wow.
but the tour guide asked us to carry some gifts for the miners. The gifts were coca leaves, some alcohol. So it's considered a good practice, because while the tour guide is taking money for the tour, but the miners are allowing you entry to the mines.
This is so nice. Like, what a nice practice they have built.
Yeah, but like the other part of the story is that when you go to the mines, it's like miles of mines. So there is mine, and you can go inside, and then it goes for kilometers. And there are a lot of mines which have been closed. As I mentioned, the whole thing can collapse at any point in time, because it's just an ant hill, and there are miners, and you walk through it, and you have to walk almost on your all fours, because it's so
Oh,
low. The roof of the tunnel is so low, and there is a railway track to get the stuff out. So when you actually go 2 kilometers inside, and you're sitting there, and the guide tells you, just close your ear, because they are going to put dynamite on the other part of the mine. And then I asked him that it is like an ant hill, it is hollow, and you're putting dynamite, people might die. And he's like, yeah, people die, like 5 6 people die every month.
thank
And
you.
if
Like, I feel so
yeah,
confident.
and you are 2 kilometers inside, घर वालों को लाश भी नहीं मिलेगी टाइप
हाँ, कुछ
का
भी नहीं, वहीं पे
thing.
गड़क
हाँ,
जाओगे, सब कुछ वो एक शॉट में हो जाएगा.
situation. And
Eeks,
it's like a
man.
random, and it's like a city inside, because there are tunnels crossing each other, there is railway track, and you can actually go from one tunnel to another tunnel, one on top of another ones. So of course I did not speak as much Spanish. I asked my guide to translate it for me. I'm like, how do you feel like losing your friends every
Yes, yes.
month? And they're like, that
Month.
is life. And even if we don't die, or if we don't lose our friends now, we will die at 45, because of the dust particle going into their lungs. none
So
of these people
sad.
None of these people are gonna get into their 50s. And that is one of the reason that it is called one of the most tragic cities there is in the world. And one of the different aspect of Pachamama which we saw there is that there was a phallus,
Hmm?
like a shivling.
Yeah.
So they were worshipping it, and they were चढ़ावा चढ़ा रहे थे cigarette का, and alcohol का. So as per them, like, this thing impregnate the mother earth for us to get the metal. Like हम जैसे यहाँ धरती
Oh,
माँ हमें अनाज देती है, so for them that is their livelihood. So they get the mother earth or Pachamama gets impregnated with all those metals. Even the government considers is too unsafe for mining to continue, but there is no employment at all in that city. There is a
it's very
museum of
depressing, man.
yeah, it is.
Whatever, man. It's very sad. So I am actually from Kolar Goldfields. So my family,
Oh,
I am actually, as in my family is from Kolar Goldfields. So our summer vacations while growing up was always in Kolar Goldfields. So I still have a stone from there. जहाँ पे एक side में there is like shining gold from it. It's beautiful.
okay.
और कोने में एक है. So that's my uncle had given that as a gift to us when we were kids. It's completely closed, right? It's been years that they have closed the mining. So when you're going into Kolar Goldfields, the entire stretch on the side has this anthill kind of a structure. So when you're saying that, I can
Yeah.
picture it entirely. The entire stretch has that structure, which is from mining the earth that you get out. उसको एक पूरा एक mountain जैसे बना के रखा है. And it's very neat. It's very neat. There is no कि ऐसे फेंक दिया मिट्टी उट्टी. But that entire stretch is like that. So my dad used to tell stories about when he was younger, they used to go down the gold mines and how it
Wow.
used to be at that time. The way you are describing it, like
Yeah.
tunnels and this and that, my dad used to tell me such stories about, Colago fields at that, I'm talking so many years back, kind of stories. Yeah. What do you
Just
do?
imagine this silver financed the Spanish Empire for hundreds of years. So much silver was shipped to Spain that the Spanish economy collapsed because of inflation. Like, just
Shit.
imagine, like, so much silver was coming to Spain that their whole economy got like went bonkers. What to do with so much
Unbelievable.
silver? Yeah.
Beautiful story, man. I mean, it's tragic, but it's just beautiful. And Potosi is supposed to be a UNESCO heritage city also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So as I said, that when you walk through the city, it's like amazing, beautiful, but you'll have like a window where like the wood of the window has, rotten away, but it is still there. They are not replacing it, probably because they can't replace it. So it's like a European city at its peak, which went completely poor, and now the indigenous people live there. There's a museum of money sort of thing as well, because as I mentioned, it was the first minting capital or something like that. And we met a very old curator of the museum, like a very beautiful indigenous woman, and she got really excited when she got to know that we are from India. And then when we told her that we had been to the mines, and she said that you should not have gone there because it's so
Oh,
unsafe. It's just so unsafe. You might not have come back. But
but a
by then we had
curiosity
already,
to hai.
by then we had already been, through the whole thing. But the city is just so real, so beautiful, like narrow lanes and school kids in the morning. Then one funny thing happened in our
Mm.
hostel. And hostel is just one of the houses. They have just converted into hostel. We were having breakfast on the second or third day in Potosi, and then this guy's like, "Hey, are you from Delhi?" I'm like, "Yeah, but why?" He's like, "Oh,
Mm.
I lived in Delhi for 3 years in Hoskas."
Oh,
Yeah.
and he's like a local
So-
Bolivian there?
no. He's
Okay,
like, he's a
another
Spanish
tourist.
travel.
Okay,
Yeah.
another
Yeah,
tourist.
another tourist. Yeah. So he's
क्या
like, yeah, you
बात है?
guys have you guys have Delhi accent. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we have Delhi accent.
तुम लोग
Yeah.
हिंदी में बात कर रहे थे? हो सकता
हाँ
है.
हाँ हाँ,
But it's so cool.
could be.
Oh, Potosi is nice. Again,
Yeah.
food and all, everything is well.
One of the advantage of traveling through these places is that everything is so fresh.
Mm.
One of the things that I remember, like I had a patty, which
Mm.
was a guava patty. So in India, you get, chicken patty or vegetable patty. It
Mm.
was a guava patty, and the middle part of guava as stuffing, and it was pink. So it
Oh,
was
the
like
pink
the pink,
guava. I
yeah,
love
the
pink
pink guava
guava.
patty. So some of these places are so heavy on coconut, not Bolivia per se, but Colombia and these places around the coast. So the cuisine is also very heavy on different elements coming together,
Wow.
but heavy on meat, heavy on
Mm.
seafood.
Lovely. Okay, that was Potosi. Which other place in Bolivia did you guys go
So
to?
we went to Sucre. Sucre is their
Mm.
political capital.
Yes.
It is again very beautiful city. It is like a white Jaipur, but not really, in the sense that it is not that crowded and not that big, but it is white. Like the whole city is white. No, there is no other color. Like there are roads and the buildings are all white. Everything is
Nice.
white.
So
Yeah.
colonialish looking, no then?
Yeah, and again, there's a beautiful park. There are a couple of churches around it, and then there are roads getting out of the parks, and you have houses and administrative buildings and restaurants and everything, and white. Everything is super white.
Oh,
Some really nice restaurants. And one of the things is the cemeteries from Latin America. So in Sucre also, we went to a cemetery. I also went in Potosi, and I went in a couple of other cities outside of these two places. The cemetery there is, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, bizarre, uh, because you walk into the cemetery and it is like a mall of coffins. Now, let me explain what I mean by
please,
mall of
please
coffins.
explain.
So there is a wall
Mm.
and there are windows, like
Okay.
6 windows on top of each other, and every
Mm.
window accommodates one coffin.
Okay. And what
So
do you
I'm
see
not
through
sure if
these
I'm making it
windows?
clear.
So
So
you
you
have like an entire wall. A wall has 6 windows in
on top
each
of each
column.
other,
In
but
each column,
and in each column, and there are like hundreds of rows. So you're just
hundreds of rows
walking by,
like
and then
this.
so on windows, sometimes people have put, the epitaph. You don't get to see the coffin, but
Mm.
you see the name of the person who was there, and their birth year, and the death year, and some people put their photographs, and some people are still coming and putting roses and stuff. So it's like one grave on top of another, but not
Mm.
underground, on top of ground. And there are 6 graves on top of each other, and then you move 1 meter ahead, then another 6 grave, and then you look on the left, there are 6 graves on top of each other. And then you walk 10 meters and you have 60 graves on this side, and then you have 60 graves on this side on top of one another.
I mean, it's a graveyard, but it's still so beautiful. It's so
Yeah, it is about the
geometrical. I like
perspective.
like
Yeah.
neat geometry.
It is
Kana.
very
It's
neat.
like
It is
that,
very
right?
neat. Yeah. So the windows are essentially tombstones and of
Correct.
different colors and different types, and you still have roses. People putting roses. Some people keep the real picture of the person there,
Right.
and it's very clean. They take care of the cemetery. So we saw one in Sucre, one in Potosi. The one in Buenos Aires is very very popular. But in
Oh,
Latin America, you will see cemeteries like these, and sometimes you have very popular people, buried, or I don't know,
right.
buried is the right word, or just
Mm.
I don't know
Yeah, yeah,
what do you
yeah.
call, yeah, what do
Over
you call
there,
when
over
you are,
there. Yeah, just over
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Whatever the
over
word
there.
is.
You can say, oh, my this person lies at 3 by 2.
Huh,
So
I know you
yeah,
have to say
something,
something like that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Ah, oh my God. Please send a picture of that. We'd like to put it up as,
I will do that.
just to explain how you describe it. Yeah, very cool. Or cool or whatever, but very unique.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. What else does Sucre have? Sucre is
So
also one
again,
UNESCO place, no? ये
yeah,
कितनी
yeah,
यूनेस्को
again,
प्लेसेस है यहाँ पे यार सारे यूनेस्को 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 ही चल रहा है.
very pretty downtown, as I mentioned, super white, colonial architectural, beautiful churches, some beautiful mansions. None of the buildings are higher than 2 floors. It's a big Spanish
Oh,
learning centers as well. A lot of foreigners come there and stay for weeks to learn Spanish because it's
oh.
relatively safer, since
अच्छा.
it's the capital of the country. Yeah.
Wonderful. I am also excited that you're going to come up with one of my favorite experiences soon. So after
Which
Sucre
is
next, which is,
so,
didn't you do Lake Titicaca?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Oh, I'm very excited about Lake Titicaca also.
we went back to La Paz.
Hmm.
So we completed our circle, and from La Paz, we decided to go to Lake Titicaca. So you have to take a bus to a place called Copacabana, which is very,
Copacabana. Yeah,
which
yeah.
is the same as the beach in Brazil, and this is the real, this is the OG. So the one in Brazil is named after this one,
Aha.
and there is a story that there were some sailors who got lost on the lake, and they prayed to some of the saint, and they got saved, and they built a church here, and they named it Copacabana. And I think something similar happened in Brazil, so they named it again Copacabana. But like getting to Lake Titicaca in itself is an experience. You get on a bus, then there is a huge river that you have to cross,
Hmm.
and you get off the bus, you get on a boat. Again, there are no life vests. The bus gets
Always
on,
you are playing with danger everywhere.
but that is how that the whole country is. And then the bus gets onto a different boat, a
Hmm.
big boat, and then we got chatting, and then we bought some peanuts when we
Hmm.
got onto the other side of the river. And then there is this man, like really gentle old man, and he's just sitting across us. I'm like, do you want some? And it's like, yeah, why not? We gave him peanuts, and then we talked a little bit in broken English, broken Spanish, and he was again like, I've never met any Indians. Wow, great. I'm like, yeah, great. And then we get to Copacabana. We had like something to eat, and we had to get to, there is an island, Isla del Sol, which is like island of the sun. I think that is what it is called. So you have to buy ticket for a boat ride or a steamer ride, and we walk into this kiosk, and the same old man is sitting there as the
Oh.
owner of that place, and he gave us like, you guys have 40% discount, and like, wow,
Oh.
great, just because of the peanuts. And then we
Nice, very
got
nice.
they got on this boat. The weather is extremely chilly. So now Lake Titicaca is world highest navigable
Yes.
lake. So there are certain lakes which are higher than that, but this is the highest one where you can actually take a boat and get from one place to another place. And it's super chilly. We are sitting on the top of this steamer sort of a thing,
Hmm.
and there are swans and different birds following us. And you just,
Wow.
I have taken videos where they're like just following the whole trawler all the way to this island, and you have to climb up to the top. We had booked a very very small place. It was not on internet. Someone had given us a number. We got there,
Hmm.
and it was run by two cholitas, not very friendly.
Acha,
uh, so we went and
cute.
asked for food. So
Hmm.
they were very, how to put it, upfront. So like
Hmm.
we went there, and we are hungry. They're like, no food. Probably they didn't know English. uh, so nothing against them, but like when we went there, our experience was not the greatest. We just got this super super cold vibe. But we got into our room, and from the room the view was like completely amazing. Beautiful lake, blue as it gets, and then you have these mountains surrounding it. And then sometimes the sun rises, sometimes the moon rises from behind those mountains, and it gets super chilly.
But how
Suhail
was the
belted out a
sunrise
Ghalib
here?
couplet. So it it is very important for Inca mythology because it is said that the beginning of Inca civilization or the culture or the first king actually descended from the sun at this island. I'm not very sure. There is a
Okay.
story.
Some legend.
There is some legend, but it is very important for the Incan mythology that this is where they descended from the sun. So we are talking about a civilization which says that we have divine right to rule because we are descended from the sun. So the sunrise, again, very pretty, rising from behind the mountains, blue shimmering lake. And yeah, so then it was the same way back. We took a steamer back to the other side of the lake, and then we started our journey back to La Paz, and that was it for now. Next day was our last day in La Paz, and now from here I went to Ecuador, which was Ayahuasca.
Okay, so I've heard a lot about this and I'm going to have a lot of questions to ask you about it. So let's take a quick break and then we'll talk about this ayahuasca in great detail. A commercial break? Not really. This is just to let you guys know that we have now started a service of curating travel itineraries to destinations made just for you. So if you want to get your vacation planned, leave us a note on Instagram or DM us on our Substack page and we'll plan something super special for you. We're at misadventuresofasneaker.substack.com. And don't worry, we have all the links on our show notes. Please support us by following and subscribing to our newsletter and Instagram page, Misadventures of a Sneaker. Thank you.
So welcome back, Sharique, after this commercial break.
Thanks, Revati, which lasted longer than we thought it would.
Sahi baat hai. So for our listeners, we are doing this recording over a second session because the first one went too late into the night.
Yeah.
This is our round 2 of the conversation. So you've taken us through a lot of your locations and experiences in Peru and Bolivia.
You had mentioned that you went to Ecuador for the ayahuasca experience.
I have heard or rather read that this is an experience that can be told properly only by someone who's experienced it, because for everyone else, they would think of it as a psychedelic or as a, drug to get high. So tell us more about it and also tell us कि तुमको पता कैसे चला, because this is something not very old for us to know. Chalo, this practice is happening since like centuries and centuries, but we don't know much about it. We don't know where you get the right experience because there'll be a lot of fakes as well.
Yeah. So before we start, I think it is very important that we use the right semantics. So we essentially call it a medicine rather than using words like drugs or psychedelics. While it is psychedelics in some form, but it has been used as medicine by the indigenous people of the Amazon forest, Andean mountains in that region for centuries, as you mentioned. So just setting the context that it was a very, very advanced civilization, and the way Eastern civilizations like India, China, Buddhism have meditation as a way of healing. For some people, it is a way of connecting with God. In some way, it is a way of connecting with yourself. So a lot of these cultures had these medicines which they would use to the same use as almost like meditation in Eastern civilization. So ayahuasca is a medicine that is very old and very almost like religious stuff that has been going on for centuries, even millennium in that region. So it is being done by the indigenous people, and there is a whole process. There is shaman who know how to actually make it. While it is known as ayahuasca, it is a combination of two different herbs. So you take it and concoct it. There is way of concocting it, and the ratio depends on shaman to shaman, depends on person to person. So just imagine an old Mayan temple, and there is shaman. There is a fire, and shaman is giving this medicine to people all around him, and they are connecting with their own self. They're connecting with God. So just imagine that kind of religious healing medicine sort of context. And then somewhere around early 20th century, some of the Western writers who were, traveling through the region started to, know about this medicine. Some of them experienced it. Some of them saw other people experiencing it and started writing about it. And that is when it got to a little bit of popularity, or at least I would say be making people aware in the rest of the world about that. But somehow in the beginning of 21st century, in last 7-8 years, it has hit a sort of a celebrity status with a lot of Hollywood, a lot of American celebrities trying it out, live tweeting it, live streaming it. So it has become quite popular. And then, as it happens with a lot of different things, it has been commercialized. So there are a lot of luxurious, ultra luxurious resorts in Central America. Yeah, retreats where you can go and try ayahuasca, and a lot of people are doing it. So the one that I opted for was being done by the locals, but the setup was being run by some of the Americans. So they had certain safety protocols, for instance. So there was an ambulance on the ground. So it was very, very real, done by the local people in the way it has been done for years, but it was still a sort of managed environment. So you actually have to go very high in the Andean mountains. It is a sort of a campground. So nothing is permanent. You live in camps. All the people who want to do ayahuasca. So there are batches of 5 days, 7 days. You live together. You clean the camps. You do your dishes. You cook your food, and in the evening you have this ceremony. So this is
very
where
immersive kinds then.
Yeah, very immersive kind. And how I got to know about it, so at work, and it happened with work. It is very, very strange. So I had a friend, Raul. He had gone to Latin America to almost the same trip that I did, to Machu Picchu and a couple of other places. But somehow he got to know about this thing, ayahuasca, which will lead to ego death. So he got very excited and he came back and he's like, Sharique, let's do ego death. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what is ego death? And
I love the phrase, ego death. It's really cool.
Yeah. So it's like, so that is the phrase that they use. So like, ego dies and then you are face to face with the real stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Why would you use a phrase like that? What sort of, crazy drug thing that you have stumbled upon? And he kept trying to convince me, and I didn't agree. I didn't want to do it because, I thought it's some sort of shady drug sort of thing. But I started reading up, and then there were articles that I mentioned that it is not really a drug. It is a medicine that has been used for centuries, for healing purpose, for religious purpose. And then I started reading a lot of scientific article about it. So it was actually, I read an article where it mentioned that your brain on some of these psychedelics, if you get a brain scan, the activity of neurons is almost similar to someone who has been doing meditation for 20 years, essentially. So it is almost the same thing. When you are meditating, you are just trying to get rid of all the distractions, just focus on some sort of singularity, maybe the real you, or maybe your connection with the supernatural, or even your connection with God, or just, away from what is going all around you. And essentially that is what Raul meant when he mentioned ego death. So I read all those articles, and then I read how the same thing is being used for treatment of PTSD. A lot of hospitals and a lot of places have started giving psychedelics to terminally ill patients, because in that moment they want that clarity of their lives, they want clarity of who they are and those sort of things. So I think reading about it took me into both the directions, the age-old healing and medicinal purpose and religious purpose, and the modern application of these medicines in curing depression and curing PTSD. So then I felt that it is not, a drugs. It is something, it is something that is worth trying. But definitely reading the story, it was also a brave decision. You have to cleanse your body before you get there. You have to stop eating non-veg, you have to stop eating dairy, because when you have this medicine, it interacts with your body, and your body is like goes through a lot of turmoil. So the better prepared you are, the better it is going to be in terms of your physical experience during the event of ayahuasca.
Man, I have no idea, but I think curiosity will kick in, and for curiosity, I would like to head to one of these things.
So what is this medicine like?
So it is, as I mentioned, it is misconceived as a single plant, but it is in fact a brew forged from two distinct plants. And the combination of these two drugs keep changing between different nights of the retreat, so that you have different experience and different depth of your experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, so coming back to my interaction with Rahul, I kept talking about it, we kept discussing it, and then I wanted some sort of authentic experience. So then we Googled a lot, we asked a few people that we knew back in Ecuador and Peru, and then we got to know about this retreat. We read about it. As I mentioned, it was run by few of the Americans who had moved and were living in Ecuador for some 30, 40 years doing this. They had learned the process, and they were very, very respectful of the local indigenous practices. So they were just trying to manage and provide a safe environment for people like us to go there and experience this. So we booked it. We booked it for 5 days. We took leaves from our bosses, telling them that we are going to different places. And then we booked our flights to Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador. From Quito, we had to take another flight to a city called Cuenca. And from Cuenca, we were picked up in a trailer and we were driven deep into the mountains. So after a while, we had left the civilization, so as to say, and went deeper and deeper into the mountains, and then we found this campsite, which was a massive campsite. So it has people were gardening, and there were some Americans and Europeans who were living there for years. Some of them come for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So anyone can come, stay as long as they are respectful of the medicine, they are respectful of the local culture. So these people are like completely engrossed. They are sweeping the floor. It's like some ashram that you might want to imagine. People are coming and going. Some of them just come for a retreat like I went, and then just stay back because they find the community that they had been craving. They really connect with the medicine. They find their real self. They find their real worth in a lot of cases. And these people are also very, very helpful with new people who arrive, people like me and Rahul, who do not know much about the medicine and who are going to react the way I did. We'll get to that. They help them through the entire experience of of the medicine, to be honest, because
it's almost like a healing thing, right?
Yeah. So they have been through this for such a long time, and they have seen so many people go through this. So them being there is very, very helpful. And another added thing is that they speak English, unlike the local shaman. And they are able to understand what we are going through and help us through the process.
Wow. I've also heard or rather read that one ideally should go through one of these ceremonies. Is that what you call like a 5-day or 3-day or whatever thing? Ceremonies when you're at a crossroads of life. So that's when you want the clarity. That's when you have a lot of questions in your mind. Is this something that they ask you beforehand? Like write all your questions down, journal something before you come, get your thoughts in place, things like that?
So anyone can do it any point in time. So again, I will talk about just physical exercise, or we all should do at all point in time, or maybe meditation we should all do at all point in time. But when you are really low, right, when you are like physically really low, and then people like, oh, you should exercise. Maybe when you are going through some sort of mental health issue, then people talk about meditation. So you can do it any point in time, but really when you are really at a crossroad, or when you are really hit the rock bottom, it makes it more pertinent. Because you want to do something. And the people that I met there were mostly of both the kinds. And about myself, I had been living in the US for 4 years, and I had traveled a lot. I was traveling a lot. I was traveling every weekend. But at some point in time, I was diagnosed with depression, clinical depression. And I think it had to do with a lot of things. I was homesick for sure. And then I was not really engaging with the issues that maybe homesickness or being lonely. I was just, putting them under the wraps and traveling every week and trying to, jet set through the life. But I think it is important to take a break and realize what is happening. Take a pause. And I think then I also sought therapy. And one of the most important event in my life is that she asked me, my therapist asked me, what do you do to relax? I said, I travel. She's like, that's not relaxation. I said, I read, I play Xbox, or I run, or I play football, or I read. And she's like, that's not relaxation. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I sleep. Like, that's also not relaxation. Like, what do you do to relax? Like, what do you do to relax? And I realized I had never done anything to relax. He's
So
like,
what can be, for example, I would definitely think reading would be, I mean, okay,
No,
traveling, I get it, but reading, isn't it?
no. So she's like, when you're reading, your brain is working. Like you are working. You are, doing stuff. And that is what I wanted to connect with, that experience of consumerism of experience, because you always want to be doing something, because reading is an activity. You are probably taking a break from work, you're probably taking a break from your daily life, but you are not relaxing. So that's when it hit me, and then I was also in two minds: should I stay back in the US, should I come back to India? So sort of a crossroad, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give it a try, and you are right. When you get there, they give you a long form, a lot of introspection, and that form is private. You don't have to share it with anyone. Things are
Thinking questions.
thinking questions, so that, because with these ceremonies they say that the set and settings matter a lot. So if you go with the expectation of being just high, you will end up just being high. But if you want to think about any particular event or any particular aspect of your life, or what is going on in your life, your brain will go in that direction. So it is very important to have the right setting of your brain or your mind before you go into these ceremonies. And
Beautiful.
when we got there, as I mentioned, it was a campground, temporary structure, some sort of bunk beds. I met people from all over the world who had come for different reasons. Someone had lost someone very close to them in some tragic accident, and they had not been able to overcome that. Some of them had been suffering through generational trauma, some sort of generational sexual abuse. Some of them had unknowingly hurt their near ones. Some of them were like us, me and Rahul, just trying to figure out, just be there out of curiosity and a bit of being on the crossroad.
Clarity of in life
Yeah.
and all that.
There was this old woman who was like 70 years old. She's like, I have retired, my husband has died, my kids are doing what they're doing in their life, and I wanted to try this. So she is trying all these sort of healing medicines and psychedelics all over the world. And that's when I got to know that there are frogs whose spit have psychedelic, much stronger
What?
yeah. So you catch these frogs and you squeeze them, and then they will spit out. You collect that on a piece of glass, and then you burn it, and it is a psychedelic which is much stronger than ayahuasca can ever be.
Wow.
So
Also medicinal or not medicinal?
medicinal, yeah.
Okay.
But and at this point in time, I would want to recommend a book that I had read, massively recommended. It's called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Okay.
So I had
I'll
read
add this
book.
in our show notes.
Yeah, so I had read this during when this whole experience. So again, he's a very famous journalist and author who has mostly written books about food. Very famous author. And then I think in his 50s, he goes through on this transformative journey of experiencing psychedelics. So he tries all these different psychedelics that I'm talking about. He tries ayahuasca. He goes somewhere in Africa. Tries that frog thing that I'm talking about. And then the best part is that he's a journalist and an author. So he always has the while there is an spiritual aspect, and he's someone who did not believe in all this. So he also talks about his transformation, and he talks about the scientific aspect of whatever I'm talking about. So if anyone is even remotely interested in ayahuasca or psychedelics in general, so this is a book that is highly recommended.
Awesome.
So yeah,
how was it?
Yeah, so you go there and you meet all these people. Then there is a thing. There is like a gazebo, and they ask you to help them set it up. So they put mattresses in circular way all around it, and then they set up fire in middle of it, and then they give us a bucket, and that is the preparation. And then the shamans are there and lying on these mattresses. So the people that you are meeting during the day, they're lying on all these mattresses, but now everyone is by themselves in a way. And that's when the shamans start, praying around the fire. You are supposed to look at the fire continuously, and then they give you the medicine. And it is weird, like tastes a little bit like rotten orange, and you drink it. And I just want to say it upfront. I would not be able to explain all that happened to me
Okay.
during the process, but I'll try my best. And
I'm very curious.
after a while, it seems that you are observing yourself, if it makes sense. So your body is going through a lot of, it is like pain, but you have to continuously keep looking at the fire, because that is supposed to purge you of all the negativity and everything. And then shaman has this string instrument, and they're not playing it like guitar, they're just using it once in a while, and when they are doing
You
it,
gotta hum kinds.
yeah, but then it just shakes your body. It seems like your body is like is attached to that string in some ways. And they say that don't fight the medicine, let it do its work. And what they mean is that don't fight the medicine, because you are going to go through something very, very transformational, right? And your body will experience pain, you will be emotionally drained, and you would want to resist what is happening to you, because you are not used to what is happening.
Right.
And I tried to resist it really hard. I was doing it for the first time. I had not tried any other, psychedelics. So for me, it was a very strong experience. And what I did is that I started trying to count, because I felt that that is how I would be able to stay in control of myself, by counting like 1, 2, 3. But I never went beyond 5, maybe. And I think what I was doing was wrong, because you have to let medicine take it over. And though I don't remember much, I remember lying on the ground outside looking at the Milky Way and merging with the Milky Way or something of that sort. And then I don't remember much for a very long period of time. Then I find myself lying in a corner, looking at a candle, because your mental self is disintegrating. So fire could be one, singularity that you keep looking at and try to have some sort of control. But I was crying, and then there was a shaman who was, putting a sort of, feather, something like that, over my body, just to, make it feel better. And there was one of these Americans that I talked about. He was just sitting with me, holding my hand, and he told me, just breathe. Because, like when you feel, and I'm using these words not very lightly, when you feel that your body is disintegrating and you're going through something very, very transformational, it is important to have like something that that you are doing, that if you keep breathing and you are aware of your breathing, then you know that
you are okay.
And then you should let the medicine do what it is supposed to do. So I sort of found some sort of control, and just focusing on my breathing and looking at the fire. And I think at that point in time, I let the medicine take over me. It took a long time, and I think it took a lot of help from these people. And then I had certain experiences which I think are too personal for me to
No worries.
speak here. But I had some flashbacks from my childhood, some very, very strong flashbacks, some memories with my mother, with my father, something that had happened in the family, so those sort of things. And then I had a lot of other memories from childhood coming back. Then I went back to the.
Are they all troubling memories, or would
No. Some of them are very, very soothing memories.
Okay, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah. So I think then I went and had another shot of the medicine
On the same night.
Yeah, same night. And I found something that I had never done, was humming a song to myself. And I guess that is what relaxation is. You're just lying somewhere on the bed and humming a song to yourself. So I think you were asking the question, is reading not a relaxing activity? Just compare reading to just lying by yourself and humming your comfort song to yourself. That's when or I got an answer that what is relaxation compared to all the activities that I've been talking about. So yeah, that was the first night. And then next day you wake up, and then all of you get together with the shaman, and then you recount your experience, so that you can learn and appreciate the journey different people have made. And this activity is done 3 times during the retreat, and similar experiences on those days. And so ayahuasca, I think a lot of people had very rough experiences, and the body hurting experiences. A lot of people were crying. Some of them were crying in a very sad, melancholic way. But after 3 nights of ayahuasca retreat, last day you have a day retreat. Not retreat, a day ceremony. Everything changes. And that's when you're given a medicine called San Pedro.
Okay.
So San Pedro is slightly different to ayahuasca. It is about happy memories, I would say. It is a much happier medicine compared to ayahuasca. If ayahuasca takes you, face to face with your real self, if it leads to ego death.
What is ego death?
In my instance, if I'm able to find I was 30 years old back then, and for the first time in my life, I found myself humming to myself, right?
That is a very beautiful experience, man.
Yeah. So people do that in shower, but we never do it like just sitting. You're not humming
Correct.
to yourself. I'm just saying. So I did not think about playing tennis. Then I did not think about work or anything at all. So in that sense, it a lot of things that you think are important die and are removed from your perspective. You just are facing a lot of. I don't want to say that I faced my real self, but I sort of faced what is really, really, really important. And I guess I think different people have different experiences, and I think with multiple retreats it might change for a lot of you. I was doing it for the first time. I resisted it a lot. So ayahuasca is a very strong medicine which has these sort of experiences. On the contrary, San Pedro is a medicine that gives you the courage to act upon what you have experienced, and it is much happy. Ayahuasca happens at night. It is a very singular experience in the sense you are experiencing yourself. You don't care what is happening all around you. But when San Pedro happens, it happens at the beginning of the day, and then you all collectively go on a hike together. Yeah, and then you talk about things that you don't talk about. So our shaman mentioned that we all are very close to our mothers. We talk about our mothers, and we don't really, talk about our fathers as such. So I think
Very
this
true.
this is a good time to talk about our fathers. So different people came out and talked about. Some of them had lost their fathers. Some of them had very bad relationships with their fathers, and all of us were crying, but it was like a happy cry. Yeah, so we walked through the mountains and we hiked. We saw trees. So and I was able to see like every leaf and every tree in its own. Like you see trees, you don't see a tree. So then I was seeing a tree, I was seeing a leaf, I was seeing a bird rather than bird. So I think in that
Small
sense,
details.
yeah, so that happened, and so we were there for 7 days, and I think at the end of the day, when all of us were crying and hugging after San Pedro, I think I met the people that I would have never ever met in my life. I saw the courage of these people of just being alive after having gone through what they've gone through. The person that I talked about who was sitting with me holding my hands, in that corner, he came from a family of lumberjacks, and when he was still a teenager, a big log of wood crashed into his skull,
My
and
God.
he was in coma for years, and then
What?
and then when he woke up, there was no way that he could have reconciled with the life that he had left as a teenager. So he came here to try ayahuasca and then just stayed put and never left back. And he said that you all are our family, and I think that is, as I mentioned, when you do
What a
something like
story.
that, when you do something like ayahuasca, I think the setting matters a lot, and everyone would be having very different experiences. And I feel my life is good. It's a good life, and yeah. So I came back. I'm sure I came back, and my friends told me that you are a different person.
Oh, really? I was going to
Yeah.
ask, so what did you personally feel an ego death? And did you personally feel a change? चलो बाकी लोगों को दिखा, तुम्हें कुछ दिखा खुद में?
No, so that's what I'm saying. I was much calmer. I didn't rush behind things. The sense of FOMO was gone. So I was always doing more than my share of things, reading more books than I can, eating different kind of foods and everything. So when I came back, I think I lost that in a good way. I'm not sure how much of it is still with me. But one thing that I would say, I think this is something that one should do not once in a lifetime, but probably, I don't know, maybe once in 3-4 years or something like that. I'm pretty sure that if I go there now that I'm married, have a son, things would be very, very different for me. And then
Yeah,
now
different stage of life, different,
yeah.
I won't call it issues, but different things to deal with.
Yeah, that experience at that point in time really helped me because of what I was going through in my life.
So this is almost therapeutic for you.
Yes, I think that was the purpose also, apart from just sheer curiosity. And I think it turned out to be a lot more than what I had expected. Uh, I wish I was better prepared. I think a lot of people who go there, they end up doing milder psychedelics before, going there. So for me, it was like a huge jump, yeah, going from no psychedelic to straight ayahuasca.
Probably now that you've experienced it once, you kind of know what it is. And so mentally you're aware. From
Yes.
earlier, you were like, you've never done anything at all. So even life में कभी एक दो बार किया है और फिर जाओ तो भी शायद you'll be better. Our body is run by your mind very often, right? So you'll kind of be aware and you might react better, or you might not resist it as much. You might be okay with the idea of losing control, because for many people, the idea of losing control is very, very tough. And that's when you started counting. It didn't go beyond
Yeah,
five.
yeah.
It's just like,
And I think what you meant, I forgot to touch upon it. But yeah, losing control is also, while I considered myself to be a very relaxed and chill person, but there are certain aspects of my life which I always had in my control. So I think that is also very important, that you let life take over sometimes, lose control. So yeah, I think it, as you mentioned, it was very therapeutic, and if you go with the right mindset, it will always be very, very helpful. It has been helpful for thousands of years. It is being used in a lot of scientific medical way by the modern medicine as well. So yeah.
wow, so this is a very, very, very different kind of experience, Sharique. My God. When you had mentioned ayahuasca and I read about it, I was very iffy about the whole idea of how is it going to sound, because experiencing it is different, talking about it is very different, and me interpreting what you're telling is also very different, because I did not want it to be like just getting high and
Yeah. And I am not that person,
Amaruda.
and
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, and that is why I don't talk about it as much. I hardly ever talk about it because it's very difficult to put it. I mean, it took us what 52 minutes to get here. So
Yeah.
when you're sitting at a coffee table with someone and you tell them that you did ayahuasca, because again, it is not just about me. It is, this activity and the way I describe it is representing an entire culture, an entire civilization. So you just can't be saying it.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, disrespectful, or like, oh, I did a drugs or I did a psychedelics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Whatever I've read about it is, it's a very personal experience as well. मैं कितना बोलूं, कितना कम बोलूं, कैसे बोलूं वाला वैसे हो जाता है. But you did a very good job, Shari. मतलब मेरा तो curiosity is definitely peaked. So whenever I go to that part of the world,
yeah.
I might just try. But though आजकल सब जगह है, I've heard of ayahuasca.
I
It's in
think
India also. I'm like,
in
hey
India,
भगवान. So है तो सब जगह, लेकिन जाना है तो we should do one of those
because of
actual
this
वाला.
small little things, the way they were playing that string instrument that I'm telling you, it was vibrating your soul, sort of a stuff. So
Wow. Say, wonderful. So this was an experience that you had in Ecuador, right?
yes. So I think the reason that I talked about, because Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru, they are like considered that they are neighboring countries first of all, and
Yeah.
they are Andean countries. So a lot of their culture and architecture and history is influenced by the Andean mountains. So and if someone wants to travel, I think they are neighboring countries, and it can be done in one trip. Depending
Wow.
that you have time, I think you should, because these are again mountainous countries, and they're not like Europe. Like you can jet from Paris to whatever Berlin in 3-4 hours. It's not like that. So it will take a long time. But and I think the more time you have, the more rewarding it will be. Like I spent 3 days just doing Salar de Uyuni, 5-7 days doing ayahuasca. So if you have time, I think you can do all these three countries together. But do justice to these places.
Yes. Please, everyone take a sabbatical.
Yeah.
And in the sabbatical, go here. So you can experience everything like अच्छे से पूरे से. Yeah. All right, Sharique, this was awesome, man. Tell me something. So you've given us a bunch of book recommendations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we know that you're like super well-read kind of guy. So give us some book recommendations, podcast recommendations, movies, TV series, whatever for our listeners. Some of your favorites that come on top of your head.
So I think one book that a lot of us have heard and maybe even read, it's Motorcycle Diaries by Che Guevara. So I think that is a great book to start with. And I think the movie is even better. I love the landscape. I love the background score. It does not talk about his politics at all. It is just about, a young guy coming of age, traveling through his continent. And I think it is a beautiful movie. One should definitely watch it. Then if I talk about the entire Latin America, we started with this literature thing called magical realism. So definitely, I think one of the life-changing events for me was stumbling about Gabriel Garcia Marquez, his book 100 Years of Solitude. It took me a long time. I started it and then restarted it. And then when I read it, it was really magic. And there is a Netflix series that is coming later this year. And I think you pick up any book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you are going to love it. Then you have Mario Vargas Llosa from Peru. Again, he is a Nobel Prize winner. I love a book by him. It is called Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter.
Okay.
So it's a funny book, and again he has written multiple books. He's a Nobel Prize winning author, so any book by him is worth reading. But this is a very funny book. And then I mentioned How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, which is about the whole psychedelics and ayahuasca. About movies, I think I love. So when people ask me for a movie from Bollywood, which movie should we watch? I love recommending Lunchbox, Irfan Khan's. I loved Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge while growing up. I love In the Mood for Love. It's a movie from Hong Kong. I loved movies by Stanley Kubrick. He was a British director. There is a movie called Doctor Strangelove. You have Space Odyssey. I love movies by Martin Scorsese. I love Forrest Gump. I love off late. I loved this movie called Mad Max.
Oh my God, Mad Max! You've seen the new one?
I have not. The Furiosa one. No, I'm not. I'm yet to.
Wow, what a mix, man! You're telling DDLG on one side and Mad Max on the other side.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese on one side, Forrest Gump, and all. I'm like, kuch bhi. So you have seen like anything and everything, and you like a lot of things. Yeah. Beautiful.
All right, time for podcasts now.
I listened to this podcast by William Dalrymple called The
Empire. Yes.
And one amazing podcast I think not a lot of people have stumbled upon. It's called The Art Hole.
Okay.
So I think this podcast deserves a lot more love than it has gotten. Is this some random guy who had no interest or any exposure to art? He goes about reading and talking about historical painters and artists. So he has episode about Frida Kahlo, for instance, and then he has episode about I think Picasso as well. So he has 10 hours long.
What?
A story about.
Wow, I love long form podcasts.
So about different artists. So and it's just like you and me. He's like just random guy who woke up one day and he called his podcast Art Holes, and he said that I'll talk about things that no one knows or people know, but they talk about in a very jargon sort of way. So I want to go about telling in a very layman language, and it's extremely funny. Listen to Art Hole. And he has multiple artists that he has done, but I think Caravaggio is by far the best thing that you can read. This podcast is really long form. It will start from the time of Christ. So how it started from the time of Christ.
BC se chalo karke.
Yeah. What happened to Christianity, and then what happened to Christianity, how it impacted the art at the time of Renaissance, and then how does this guy called Caravaggio figure in all of it, and then his life. And I think it's one of the wildest life you can.
Wow, this is really cool, man. Do you remember the name of the host?
Michael Anthony.
This is very interesting. Okay.
And while I haven't mentioned it, one of the TV series or a travel show that I really loved, appreciated, adored is Parts Unknown by Anthony Bourdain. So Anthony Bourdain was an American chef. So essentially he talks about the parts of a place that are unknown. There are, I think, 10 seasons, and every season he goes to 8-10 places. And I think no one has influenced me as a traveler, as a person, as a thinker, as much as Anthony Bourdain, or even as a food eater. I think, and unfortunately he died. And that was the time when I decided to take up therapy. I'm like, oh wow. But yeah, I think Anthony Bourdain. How can I forget about him? And he's so real. Like he says, the context of the food decides how good the food is. If you're hungry, even a dal roti will sound
Absolutely, yes.
so good. He will go to places where no one will go. He was so authentic. He hated the vegans. So
Hey.
he didn't hate the vegans, but he said that
That is just your personal touch to him, okay?
yeah, he didn't hate the vegans, but he was very clear in his mind. He was unapologetic and easy to identify with when you are traveling. So yeah, I think
quite a personality. Lovely. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, besides a very funky list of books and movies, your recommendation on the podcast, and then this one on Anthony Bourdain's Bars Unknown, definitely. I probably going to start with that and then, explore the rest as we go later on. Awesome, yeah, Sharique. This was like phenomenal. I mean, I can actually do a series of travel with Sharique kind of a thing, like an entire season. Ek episode with just you, because you're so beautifully traveled. It's not as well traveled. You explore a place in a very different style, which is immersive experiencing.
Thank you.
बहुत मजा आया. I'm surely going to reach out to you for lots more locations and places and stories.
Thanks for having me, and I eagerly wait for every episode that comes on your podcast. And I think one of the things is that they are so when I got to know about you and the podcast, I thought most of them are going to be very similar experience to what I have, but I think it is so diverse. I think I really appreciate that, because travel for different people, it means different things. So what I am experiencing would be a very different from a wildlife photographer, as you mentioned, or as a marathon runner. Like when you go to a place as a runner, you experience in a completely different way. So I think I really love the fact that you're bringing different kind of travelers, not just travelers to different place. So I think there is so much for all of us to learn. Like the way a wildlife photographer will look at a place would be so different from the way I look at that place. So I really love your podcast. So I think we should all thank you for bringing all this together and making our lives richer and more enriched. Yeah, I definitely mean it, because when we talk about travel podcasts, we just talk about, I ate here and I took that flight. But there are so many different forms of travel, really.
My God, that's awesome, and I'm so thrilled that you feel that way. That that's pretty much what we wanted to do. So I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it crazily too. Like hosting this is like the best thing. और मेरा तो तुम जैसे बोल रहे ना FOMO high है, मेरा FOMO बहुत high level पे है.
I can see that.
बहुत high level पे है. So my husband keeps saying, I think you should take therapy just for this FOMO thing, and this not helping. This travel podcast is not helping that at all. Where every person like, मुझे भी जाना है, मुझे भी करना है वाला हो जाता है. And your episode gave too many of those feels to me. सब कुछ देखना है, सब कुछ करना है मुझे. But this was really good fun, Sharique. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you. Yes.
See ya, मिलते हैं. Bye.
Wow, Sharique, this was really phenomenal. Now, besides just having a list of places to go to and experiences to have, we have a huge list of books to read and movies to watch as well. And as always, we've put up lots of lovely pictures that Sharique shared with us on our Instagram page. We are called Misadventures of a Sneaker. Also, a note to our listeners, you'll be happy to know that we have now started a new service of curating travel itineraries to destinations made just for you. So if you want to get a travel vacation planned, leave us a note on our Instagram or DM us on our Substack page and we'll plan something special for you. Also, if you enjoyed listening to this episode and our earlier ones, would you like to support our team by buying us a coffee? If yes, please head over to our show notes and click on support to contribute any amount you'd like. It'll be a huge morale booster for us. Thank you and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.